watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, and we are on episode 68 of the podcast today in our Steven Spielberg series. We're going to be jumping into The Lost World, Jurassic Park today, and I'm excited. It's been good so far getting into his movies of the 90s. This is his third of the 90s. I have a returning guest in J.P. Boudreaux, Jean-Pierre, a.k.a. Jean-Pierre Boudreaux. You're basically like...
basically your co-host at this point.
Prestige guest, I guess.
Yeah, I need my 5-timers club jacket. Is this 5? I think it's 5 times, maybe.
Yeah, 5 times. I think at least 5 recording.
It definitely is, yeah.
But since I've started splitting episodes,
That's
then
true.
You're technically on more episodes than that, I think.
That's true.
You might already be in 5 episodes.
Yeah.
So JP's joined me for several of our... I think your first one was Grand Budapest, if I'm remembering correctly. Were you on
Steve Zissou, actually, I think.
Yes, it was. You were on Steve. You were twice in that. In that series. Sweet. And in the Spielberg series, you joined me for Empire of the Sun, and we did a Christian Bale performances draft, which is really fun.
I still can't believe I lost that. I thought Patrick Bateman would have carried, but
I thought so too. But
I think your audience just doesn't have taste, Eli. That's what I'm convinced by.
I honestly, like, when you took American Psycho, Patrick Bateman right off the get-go, I was like, well, I mean, that's everyone is going to say that's the best performance and that's going to carry your thing. But I don't know. Maybe it was.
I just think people just haven't seen the movie. I was hoping the power of the memes would carry me through.
Yeah,
right. Because it's not a fun movie to watch.
Maybe people saw Reign of Fire, because then you take that
That's
dragon
true.
movie, Reign of Fire, and people were like, that movie, and they're like,
he's good in the movie. I like it a lot. I
haven't seen it, so I can't speak to that. So
even now, I'm like, that speaks to my inner 10-year-old. You know, like it's
yeah.
I think it'd be perfect for a remake, because I think I said this. I might have said this like when we recorded that, but like that movie was supposed to be such a higher, grander scale. But when they went into production, there was an outbreak of like foot and mouth disease in England or whatever they were filming, so they had to like really tone it down a lot. So honestly, I think it'd be perfect for a remake. I think right now that movie came out.
You think Bale could reprise his role?
I think it'd be interesting, maybe as like a kind of a wink to people who like the original one, like if he was if he had like a cameo in like a reboot. But I don't really think they could do like a direct like a legacy sequel because of the way the movie ends. You know, they kill the only male dragon, which is essentially supposed to kill the species. I mean, so I guess they could do it of like it wasn't the only male dragon.
If you go by Jurassic Park rules, and there happened to be some frog DNA that got in there, then they might,
or just nature. Nature finds a way.
Life will find a way, as they say.
Just a bunch of trans dragons flying around. Yeah.
So JP has been on the show enough that he doesn't need it. You can go listen to those other episodes to get the full intro. The quick version is that JP works. You do some filming. You do some videography work.
Yeah. It's been a while with all the strikes and everything, but every day I wake up and it's like, maybe today's the day that there's finally some productions coming back to New Orleans. We'll have to see.
Yeah. So you're in New Orleans, so hopefully some productions start popping up in New Orleans here in the near future where you can get on sets and that sort of thing. But
I know Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is apparently coming back, but that's probably one of those. That's probably one of those films that had like a smaller crew, so everybody that worked on the first one has like already gotten the call to be ready to go when they start production in a few weeks.
That doesn't mean you can't try though.
That's true. You know, you never know. You never know.
I still actually want to watch the first one. I still haven't seen it, but I did want to see it.
I think I was not as harsh to it as I saw a lot of people, just because like firstly like
it seems like, just kind of fun.
I don't know if you know about Five Nights at Freddy's, but like when those games were coming out, like I was already a little bit older, and like it was because like the whole idea of the first game was like baby's first horror game, basically. Like it was kind of like, it wasn't like, you know, overly scary and graphic like a lot of horror games. It was like kind of like somewhat kid friendly, you know, to an extent. But a lot of the background lore is actually like really disturbing. But so I think honestly it felt like a feature length episode of like Goosebumps, you know? Like I thought it hit the perfect vibe of like, if you're younger and you're a fan of the games, you know, I think it gave you the creepy vibes. But I think a lot of people who, because I feel like horror fans are some of the snobbiest people, to be honest. Like I can appreciate the occasional horror movie depending on what it's about. I'm not a huge fan of the genre, but I swear, like people I know who are like really, really into horror, they're like, if it doesn't give me nightmares for a month straight, it's not a good horror movie. I'm like, okay, dude, maybe you just need to go to therapy. Yeah. I don't know.
I think so. Well, yeah. So this episode's releasing on November 1st, so we're just out of spooky season.
I hope you all got your fill of your spooky season movies, okay?
What is your favorite horror movie, JP? What would, if you had to pick?
Man.
Just like off the top of your head. You can change your answer at a later date if you need to, so this isn't written in stone.
If you had to ask me off the top of my head, I would say it's hard for me to pick a favorite necessarily of the ones that I do like, because I think a lot of my favorites are like ones that are kind of like on the cheesier end of things, but I do think Hereditary is a masterpiece.
Oh yeah, Hereditary is great.
I love a good, like, it's weird, like I don't watch like movies about serial killers, or I don't want to watch like torture, you know, prawn kind of stuff where it's just like a bunch of like I could watch people get blown up and blood and guts in an action movie or a war movie all day long. I don't want to see somebody like slowly killed with a cheese grater and like a slasher flick. You know what I mean? I can't do it.
I watched one earlier this year called In a Violent Nature, and it's got some brutal stuff.
Yeah,
in it.
I heard a lot of people talking about that one. But
it looks beautiful. It's like as if that movie looks like if Terrence Malick made a horror movie.
I know that's beautiful. Your boy. So, I will say this. But I do, and like I don't really like a lot of stuff about like. And I don't really watch a lot of movies about like demons and stuff like that, just because like usually they're all terrible, but also like it really always bothers me when the like theological concepts are like terrible. But I do love a good creepy cult movie. I can't lie. So
have you seen The Witch?
I've still not gotten around to seeing that. I need to.
You got to see that.
I need to. I know. I'm so excited for Nosferatu, by the way.
Oh, that's probably my most anticipated movie of the whole year.
It's definitely up there for me.
I have to wait the whole entire year to finally see. Did you see the trailer?
I did.
I did. Oh man, it looks so
incredible. I can't. I mean, dude. I mean, you could like all I needed to see was that picture, like we got the behind the scenes photo of like Willem Dafoe like looking crazy, but that shot of him in the trailer where he's got the long hair with the impeccable mustache, like beard stash going on. I was like. You could have just shown me that, and I would have been sold. Like I'm there, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen the. I mean, as far as like Robert Eggers goes, like I saw The Lighthouse. I don't think I'll ever watch it again.
It's a trip,
but it was a good movie. Like I could appreciate the performances. Loved The Northman. It was one of my favorite movies of 2022. Yeah.
I wasn't as high on it, but I still really liked it.
So I'm definitely, I think, Nosferatu, I mean, I already would have been seeing it because I love monster movies. I love a good vampire movie.
Yeah.
So I was already going to see it, but knowing that he's the person behind it, I'm sure it'll be a little more elevated, as they say. I know some people really, really hate the elevated horror trope, but But yeah, I think Hereditary is a masterpiece.
You got to see The Witch.
So I know
you got to make up for that. So it's just, this is releasing November 1st, but it's just getting started in October as we're recording. So you have a whole almost a month to get that one in.
I will say another little shout out if people haven't seen it. I just got to say, because I saw this within the last couple of months, and after hearing a lot of people rave about it, well, like I heard a couple people, like a couple reviewers I like rave about it. If your audience and they like horror movies, if they can appreciate more of a slow burn, if they have not seen The Empty Man, highly recommend. It's a very stupid name, I agree, but
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's long. It's like a 2.5 hour long horror film, which is very rare. And it's I think it's a little bit more of like a mystery thriller for most of it, and then it kind of gets into more like cosmic horror elements. But highly recommend. I loved it. I think I literally gave it like 4.5 or 5 stars. So yeah,
that's cool. Okay, I'll have to check that out. My go-to favorite horror movie is Blair Witch Project.
Okay, it's a classic.
Thriller. Yeah, classic. But The Witch is up there. Us, Jordan Peele is up there for me.
Nope.
Nope was phenomenal. Nope. It feels less of a horror movie. It's hard for me to qualify.
It's very Spielbergian, actually.
Yeah,
like I remember.
It is. I call it Jaws in the Sky.
Yeah. I remember people were saying it's more like Jaws. It's like his take on Jaws, which I definitely agree with. But I think
guess you could call it a monster movie, but so it's technically horror, but it just doesn't. It has more of just a thriller kind of.
No, for sure. I mean, it's like a. I mean, I think it's on my list of like feature length episodes of the Twilight Zone. You know, I kind of have this like.
Which Peele did do a remake of, so.
That's true, and some of the episodes are really great. Some of the ones I watched, not like the stories were good, but also just the way they were shot and everything. They all look great. I love the one with Steven Yeun in it, where it's like a small town in Alaska, and like it's kind of like a low-key remake of like it happened on Mulberry Street, or whatever that one is, where like you have the aliens on the hill turning all the power grids off, trying to put people into a panic. But I kind of have this unofficial cinematic universe of movies that are not related but feel like Twilight Zone episodes. Yeah. And Nope is definitely on there. But I don't think it's just Spielbergian in the fact that it's kind of a take on Jaws. I think also his approach to the way he made the movie feels like kind of early to mid-career Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, the way it's filmed is very much like very showy, but in a enjoyable, not in a like pretentious way, but in an enjoyable way.
Right.
That feels very much like Spielberg. Yeah, I agree. I want him to make a new one, but we'll see. I think he has something in the works, but I don't think we know what it is yet.
I think he does. I love how he's kind of become one of those directors where they can announce nothing more than a release date and people get hyped. I think he's got a release date reserved for his next film for next year, maybe, but I don't think we know anything about it yet.
And we've followed a lot of bunny trails. I hope, like you said, I hope people got their horror spooky month fill.
Maybe they watched The Lost World as part of it. Who knows?
Maybe. I know I did. So what we've gotten some of your favorite horror movies, but the real question is, what is your favorite dinosaur? That's the real question.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've considered this question, but I will say, there's that classic meme of like, it's like, like big trucks, dinosaurs, like, there's like a couple other options. It's like, a boy will turn 6 and make one of these his entire personality. I was a dinosaur 100%. A dinosaur kid 100%, okay? Like when I was like 6 years old, that was like my favorite thing in the world. I gotta say, I think my go-to answer would be Velociraptor, but how they are portrayed in Jurassic Park, not like the not the actual scientifically accurate Velociraptor.
Yeah,
as much
not
as
the
it breaks
turkey version.
No, as much as it breaks my heart. I mean, ever since I was a kid, before I was old enough to watch Jurassic Park, we had this old BBC documentary from like the early 2000s called Walking with Dinosaurs, which was one of. It was like one of those. It was like Apple TV kind of redid one more recently, but it was kind of like, I think actually it might have been called Walking with Dinosaurs. Like it was like a reboot, so to speak, with like more scientifically accurate dinosaurs, better CGI. I've gone back and watched some clips of like the one I used to watch as a kid, and at the time I thought it was incredible, and now when you watch it, it's like, man, this CGI is pretty rough. But I mean, I used to watch that all the time, and so I mean, you got to go with Velociraptor, or I mean, who doesn't love the T-Rex? I know it's like basic, but there's a reason why those are the basic answers.
Oh yeah, I mean, T-Rex is, I mean, it's an incredible beast, I really like. I've always had a spot in my heart for the long necks, whether it's Brachiosaurus or Brontosaurus or Apatosaurus, all the long neck ones. Those are some cool dinosaurs, I'm
gonna be honest. I think the Brachiosaurus was. I think that actually was my favorite when I was a kid.
Yeah, and you also have Littlefoot, which I think Littlefoot is like technically an Apatosaurus. I think Littlefoot. So I took my son to see The Land Before Time. They showed it at the theater.
Gotta get that childhood trauma that you had, right?
Yeah. So that was fun to show my son that. I don't think he like really latched onto the parent dying at the beginning, but yeah, that was fun.
How old is your son?
He's 5.
Okay, yeah, maybe just a hair. Maybe another year or two, he'd be like, he'd break down in tears like we all did.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But yeah, that was fun. But yeah, I like the long necks, and then like you said, T-Rex, and I really like the what are they called? Is it Ankylosaurus or Ankylosaurus or something
one with
like
the big
that?
ball at the end of their tail.
Yeah, those ones.
Yeah, Ankylosaurus. Cool.
Yeah, those are cool. But yeah, so I guess Stegosauruses are cool too, and that's like, I feel like that was like the feature of this one was the because that's like the reveal you get.
Ooh,
the Stegosaurus.
That's how it always starts, and then
yeah.
There's the running, and I love that line so much, dude.
Yeah.
What do the kids say? What do the kids say these days? Ian Malcolm is giving brat in this movie.
I don't know what. I can't keep up with what they're saying these days. He's doing something.
I mean, technically, he did in the first movie too. There's, of course, there's that iconic pose of him with his shirt off, like on the table. But
I think in the first one, he's more. I guess it would be Riz. He's more of the Rizzler, I guess, in the first one.
Definitely don't say Rizzler. I think Rizzlord.
Rizzlord? Is that what it is?
Rizzlord is the positive. Rizzler, I think, is like.
I'm in my 30s. I can't use these words.
I'm not far behind you. I'm turning 29 in a couple weeks, so
I cannot use these words. But yeah, I guess every once in a while in like Instagram Reels, I'll get like one of those videos where like someone my age is explaining what these words mean, and I'm like, I don't need these videos. I don't need to know.
I still help out with the youth group in my church. So I try and stay in touch with the culture, but.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Malcolm, he definitely has something going for him that I feel like he loses a bit of it in the second movie, but that's okay.
I think there's some reasons for that we can get into for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, so it's mid-90s, probably around, I would guess around 95-ish. Spielberg and Crichton start kind of discussing a remake, or not a remake, but a sequel of Jurassic Park. They they both kind of originally didn't really have any intention for a sequel, but alas, everyone wanted a sequel. And it's kind of one of those things where Spielberg was so geeked out to make Jurassic Park that when there was so much like traction from it, even though he was kind of one of those guys that was like, I don't want to make sequels. He kind of gave into the pressure and was like, all right, I guess let's do this. Kind of talked Crichton into it. And yeah, in fact, I remember Spielberg saying something about like, or Crichton, one of them saying something about how Spielberg wanted to make a sequel, but he didn't want to do it without there being a book, so he talked Crichton into writing the book. Crichton chooses the...
Well, I was going to say, I think it's just really interesting how... I think it's really, really rare that it's like the sequel book is a sequel to the movie, not to his first book, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, he... So, like, at the end of the book, and we can talk more about differences of, like, book stuff later on, but, like, I think people say that because technically at the end of the book, the idea that you get is that Ian Malcolm has died, and then ta-da, Ian Malcolm is alive at the beginning of the second book, and Ian Malcolm doesn't die in the movie either. So I think that might be why people say that.
Not gonna lie.
I think he's just kind of pulling. Yeah, I think he's just kind of pulling a Sherlock Holmes on us.
Maybe so.
But also, John Hammond dies at the end of the book. So,
I mean,
he's like the Ian Malcolm thing is kind of like it's never. I guess I don't remember it being explicitly like stated. And now Ian Malcolm is dead. But John Hammond is definitely he's
you could not kill Richard Attenborough in that movie.
Right.
Like, he just gives off such like, he created a theme park full of, death machines, but he's just he's just trying to be a good grandpa, you can't kill him. I think they would have had to get like someone way slimier to play John Hammond.
Absolutely.
To justify killing him off. I don't know. I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head who was like kind of around that age and like around the kind of the early 90s they could have pulled it off. But I don't. Yeah, that would have been really weird to give, because I feel like I'm pretty sure in the books John Hammond's like, I've heard he's like I've never read them. I really want to.
He's more of like a con man.
Yeah, he's like he's kind of he kind of deserves it in the book, but as far as the movie version goes, he's just trying to be a good grandpa and impress his grandkids, He's just I think it's like in the movie he's like, he does deserve it, but they make you like feel like you don't want him to. But yeah, so Crichton, he does write the second book. He's same title, names it the same title as Arthur Conan Doyle's 1912 novel about dinosaurs in some high plateau in South America, which I've never read, but it does sound interesting. I don't know if it's supposed to be really good or not. And it's one of the very, very first kind of sci-fi movies, if you think about it, because they made they have like a movie with a bunch of stop motion they made. And fun fact for you, the first version of King Kong from 1933 actually reused footage from The Lost World for the movie.
And they do some stop motion in that too, with King Kong fighting the T-Rex and stuff in that movie. Good movie. And a big influence on these movies, in fact. But yeah, so the kind of idea of dinosaurs evolving in the wild excited Spielberg, and Crichton kind of knew when he was writing the book that he kind of knew Spielberg wasn't planning on like staying faithful to his book. And I don't know, in the interviews I watched, he was like kind of talking about how he thinks it's unwise for movies to like slavishly follow the book. And I almost wonder if he's like, it really deep down in his heart, he's like, wishes Spielberg would have made it more like his book, but he's just like, for press sake, like, oh yeah, but they were they were like pretty good friends, so I think they probably had discussed all that.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if there are, those couple of kind of major character differences between the book and the first Jurassic Park movie, then it's like, well, if you want me to write a book for the sequel movie you want to make, you've kind of forced my hand to make different decisions with some of these characters, because like obviously John Hammond, like you said, doesn't die, and he's in this movie very briefly as well. So yeah, I'm sure as I can see as a writer, Michael was probably like, you really had to do that, but okay, all right, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's funny because the first movie is closer to the first book than the second movie is to the second book. It's there's a lot different between the movie and the book this time around, and the last time they generally kind of tried to follow the same like plot points and characters and stuff from the book, which but yeah, so Spielberg started working on the film before the book was even published, and he's coming off of the, and I think I've said it on, I haven't recorded the Schindler's List podcast yet, but I know on Jurassic Park I mentioned how 1993 was possibly the greatest year for a director ever for Spielberg. I mean, it's easily arguable that having Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in one year is probably the best director year ever.
I mean, it's literally the two different ends of the spectrum of film. You got something that's like kind of a much more
$1 billion blockbuster.
Yeah,
basically.
A blockbuster, a massively successful, universally loved blockbuster, and then also a massively successful, universally loved like
prestige film,
prestige drama, right?
Yeah, prestige history drama. Yeah, that won. They both won all the Oscars together, I guess. One for the the film side, like I guess acting and best picture and directing and cinematography, and one for the more technical stuff. But yeah, so he's coming off of that, and I talked in those episodes about how like that year was just like so rough on Spielberg, as anyone could imagine. But yeah, so he said it took him like 2 years to kind of get back on his feet and recover, and this is what he jumps into. He saw this as his first like real sequel. He didn't really consider like the Indiana Jones movies like sequels, because it's such a it's kind of that serial, that old serial kind of thought of these are just all different stories in the serial. So he didn't really see those as like pure sequels, just more stories about Indiana Jones. And so which makes sense to me. They're not like super interconnected plot wise.
I wonder if, I guess you could argue they're more like entries into the franchise than they are like traditional sequels, because again, like I mean, well, firstly, Temple of Doom is a prequel, but then Last Crusade, yes, it does take place after Raiders of the Lost Ark, but there's like almost nothing about it that's related, as you said. So, right. There needs to be like another word for those kinds of situations.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Indiana Jones franchise movie, I guess you could say. I don't know. It does. I guess maybe one day maybe there is a word out there and we just don't know it. But yeah, Spielberg talked about how he got a bunch of letters from, I'm assuming from kids, but it's very possible from adults too, wondering why he didn't have a Stegosaurus in the first movie. And
I can imagine a handful of paleontologists that were like, you got to put the Stegosaurus in the next movie, man. Yeah. Come on.
I mean, to be fair, like, I don't know why he didn't think of that for the first movie, because what's more like great for the big big screen than those huge back plates, you know.
And the spikes on the tail. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
There's so much you can do with that, which we get to in this movie. But
yes. So, you know, he even said it was the first true collaboration between him and his audience. He's just like, all right, I got to give the audience more of what they want. So got the Stegosaurus in there, amongst other things. More T-Rexes. You know, because technically the book has 2 T-Rexes already. And the movie did not. I only had the 1. So got the 2 in on this one. But yeah, wrote the story. He drew some stuff from the first book. So like, there's some the attacks of the compies. So like the little girl at the beginning getting attacked. That's actually at the beginning of the first book.
Phenomenal opening scene. Like, yeah, it's like one of those film openers that I'm like, it's like its own short film. You know what I mean? Like, he could have just put out that, and it would have been just so good, so good.
Yeah, yeah. And he's like the king of like deaths off screen, I think. It happens like multiple times in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got to keep it PG-13 somehow. But yeah, so he's working with David Koepp again, who worked on the screenplay for Jurassic Park, which I was never clear in my research there if he just kind of like came in and redid the screenplay that he already had from Crichton, or if I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but yeah, Koepp works on this with him. He wants him to focus on the characters being like hunters and gatherers, is how he phrased it. So you kind of have the 2 groups of characters, and that's kind of how he characterized them. And then kind of putting in, like, inserting more like action into the movie, which is definitely there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is what Koepp said. He said that for the first one, people were wondering, like, can they do the dinos? Like, can they actually like put dinosaurs on the screen and it looked good? And when they did that, he says you can't just like have more dinosaur, like just do dinosaurs on screen and think that's going to impress people for the second one, because they're going to say, sure, you can. We know now you can do the dinosaurs, but what can you do with the dinosaurs? And so and you can see that in the movie. That was a huge influence on like how the movie was written, how they like developed the set pieces. Probably as like, okay, we can do the dinosaurs, we know we can do them, like let's try to do everything we possibly can with these dinosaurs now. But yeah, so along with Koepp, most of the Jurassic Park's team signs back on. You've got Jack Horner, the paleontologist, back as a consultant. ILM doing the CGI again. Stan Winston doing the animatronics. Got some 2 T-Rexes this time. Baby Stegosaurus, a baby T-Rex.
Baby T-Rex, man.
Oh yeah, baby T-Rex is great. I gotta admit it. He's pretty great. I'm assuming it's a little baby boy. He kind of gave me the baby boy feel, you know.
Oh, he's definitely a rambunctious little guy for sure.
Yeah, so just rolling through the crew, Gerald R. Molin. In my notes it says Moulton, but it's not Moulton. I don't know, a typo in my notes. Gerald R. Molin, no T. And
the guy
Colin
must
Winston
be real hot-blooded.
Oh yeah. But Molin was a producer on the first one, and he's back producing again. Of course, based on the novel by Michael Crichton. Loosely, I might add. You've got we just talked about David Koepp wrote the screenplay. This is now his second collaboration after Schindler's List with Janusz Kaminski, so who will as we'll see will become a regular contributor in Spielberg films going forward in his career. His 2 like career-long staples in Michael Kahn as the editor and John Williams doing the music. And then, yeah, just a bunch of names coming back from Jurassic Park. Ron Judkins for the sound, Richard Hims also doing sound effect stuff.
Which I would say
The sound is great in this
Richard
movie.
Timms might be the unsung hero of this film because
I think you're right.
There are so many. I mean, like speaking of like the baby T-Rex, like there are so many just iconic like noises that they created for the dinosaurs in this film. Like his little kind of vocalization that he does throughout the movie, that kind of groaning sound. I'm not even gonna try and do it, but
even more than just that, like so, like the thing. One of the things that stuck out to me, and that I even heard on another podcast, them like pointing this out, was the sound of the glass cracking, when in the trailer scene.
Yes,
like that.
Yes,
that sound of the glass cracking is like, I mean, the thing that holds the tension. Yeah, of that whole scene. It's
I don't want to get too much into that right now, but because I'm sure we're going to talk about it. But
oh yeah,
that
so Richard Timms,
sequence.
Richard Timms, like, well done, my man. You did it. And he was on Jurassic Park. I think he worked on one or two other films even before that with Spielberg. So he's great. Rick Carter is back production design. William James Teagarden was an art director. I think these are a couple of new ones. Lauren E. Polizzi and Paul Sonsky. I don't remember those names from the first one, but doing some art direction. Stan Winston and Michael Lantieri are back for the mechanical special effects, along with Miguel A. Fuertes. And then Dennis Murin doing the visual effects again, alongside Randall M. Dutra, who was kind of I think they called him the motion supervisor. He was in charge of like the motion of the dinosaurs, and Dennis Murin was more of like just the visual effects director. He led the Dennis Murin led the ILM team in post. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then let's go through the cast. Talk a little bit about these guys, because it's a big cast. It's not like Spielberg's biggest cast, like of big names, but it's a pretty big one. So you got Jeff Goldblum, of course, coming back as Ian Malcolm,
the GOAT,
adding some moments of humor to a more dark film, of course, than the first one.
I feel like I feel like the way that he portrays the leading man in this movie maybe was a little ahead of its time in some ways. Like I'm thinking about it right now because I think like we see like this kind of like jaded, reluctant hero a lot more these days. But
okay,
like,
I see what you mean. Yeah,
kind of like, you know, I mean, think about like the '90s reacting to the '80s, like coming out of the '80s where you had all these macho dudes. I mean, I feel like the first one you really see is like Bruce Willis as like John McClane, you know, and I you know, as like this guy, he's like kind of just in the situation and he's trying to make the best he can with it.
Yeah,
but
I was thinking of Harrison Ford and The Fugitive too.
Yeah, I would say that too.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think it's
like
I think it's we're just so much used to it now.
Yeah.
Because I think The Fugitive was like what, like 94, 93.
I was thinking The Fugitive was late 80s as well, but
no, it's definitely the
wrong.
90s for sure. I know that much. I know it's definitely a 90s movie. Phenomenal movie too. If your audience
93, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, I mean, obviously it's Jeff Goldblum's arguably his most iconic character, outside of like maybe like The Fly, but I can't even remember the name of the character in The Fly. I just know he's in that movie. But I think for most people, myself included, when I think of Jeff Goldblum, I think of Ian Malcolm. I think he's like Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man level to me, like just perfect for this role. And I really love his character in this movie. I'm glad that we kind of see a little bit of a softer side of him in some ways, because he is kind of on dad mode, you know, a little bit. But yeah, no, I think it's great. I know we're gonna get into the rest of the cast, but I will say, outside of like kind of the main three, I think this movie has more iconic side characters in the first movie. Like, there's so many good little like character actors in this movie that have these characters that are ingrained in my brain.
Definitely agree on one of them for sure.
Like of course, like, you know, in the first movie you have Samuel L. Jackson's got a great bit part. You know, he's pretty funny. And then you've got
Wayne Knight.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably the most iconic side character outside of like the security director who has the clever girl scene, right?
Yeah.
But this movie, I can think of at least 3 side characters that in my brain are like 4. Actually, I would say at least 4 side characters in my brain that are like iconic to me from this movie, which we'll definitely get into. But
yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I feel like, so my whole thing with Jeff Goldblum is, so, you know, we did talk a little bit about like the success of the actor influencing a book sequel. Like, how many times does that happen? I don't know. My thing with Jeff Goldblum is I'm not sure if he's playing the same character at all in this movie, which doesn't really have anything to do with him. It's like
he's differently for sure.
He's definitely still like Jeff Goldblum. Like, the way he speaks is, that's the thing. Like, Ian Malcolm in the first movie, like, is so just Goldblum acting, and in this movie it's the same thing. Like, so like the little like stuttering like stuff that he does and the little quips and stuff, that's less like Ian Malcolm to me than just Jeff Goldblum. That's what Jeff Goldblum does and does well. And so other than that, like, the character just feels like a totally different person in this movie.
I think you could argue that they may have tried to make him a little more likable to be a leading man, because he's not likable in the first movie, but he is kind of.
He's a little bit of a sleaze.
He's a little bit of an antagonist. Yeah, and he does have a very sleazy vibe as well. But he's a little antagonistic. In some ways,
I think the reason he works so well in the first one, and in the book, as far as that goes, is because he's pretty pessimistic, sure, and so you could say like he's a negative character in that way, but I think he really like acts as kind of the along for the ride, asking the questions that we're all thinking.
he's the audience
surrogate. Yeah. And I think that's why he works so well in the first one, and then you try to like twist that character into the leading man, and I'm not sure if it totally works. It does. Yeah. It's just like it's on and off for me for this one.
I could definitely agree that as much as I love Jeff Goldblum as this character, I could definitely understand the argument that I don't know that it's a little. This movie might be a little more well regarded if it was a different character in the lead, so maybe a little more charismatic. Because again, like you said, like he does feel different. I feel like he is charismatic in the first movie, but again, he's like that pessimistic voice. I think because they wanted to make him
having to carry the movie.
Right. Where in this case, he does. He's still got that pessimism, but he's a lot softer about it. It's definitely I feel like his whole vibe in this movie is just very nonchalant. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, which again, I do think is arguably the weakest part of the movie, even though I do love this one. But I can totally understand the argument that he may not have been the best choice for the leading man, and I don't know if it's an Ian Malcolm thing or a Jeff Goldblum thing. But obviously, you could not have Ian Malcolm without it being Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, I think
this is why he's always been more of a character actor. Like,
yeah, he is.
I mean, outside of a movie like The Fly, there's very, very few movies where he's the lead character, and I think that's probably because even that movie is as fun as it can be, kind of as a sci-fi horror. I do think it kind of maybe suffers from some of the same issues where it's just like, as much as I love him as an actor and his mannerisms, and a lot of times he's not really playing a character; he's just himself in a different role. I do understand the argument of like he's not necessarily the most charismatic leading man per se, as much as he is fun to watch perform.
It works for me in The Fly because he's playing it so weird, and that character has to be so like weird and strange, and the way he can like totally flip from being a like weird nerd guy to like like kind of macho like he is in the first Jurassic Park, that he has to do in that movie, and it still works. It feels the way he like delivers lines makes it feel natural, and not like scripted. And I think that's the strong point. But I mean, you got to think too. Like he's just like he's such a like you were saying, super strong side character actor. Like I mean, you think about he's coming off of Jurassic Park where he was that, and then Independence Day too. Where he's the same thing.
Which I think he's a little bit more of a leading man, but he's not carrying the movie, so I think it works.
He's not. Yeah.
But he's great in
that's
that
the thing.
well.
He's a main character in both of those. In Jurassic Park and in Independence Day, you would say he's a like quote unquote main character, but he's not like the leading man of the movie. He's not. Yeah.
I mean, I already quoted it, but I mean, I love his delivery of the line where he's like, "Ooh, that's how he always starts," and there's the running and the screaming, and I think I love that. That's just the energy that he brings. Like this whole movie, he's just like, oh shit!
My favorite line,
you know what I mean?
I think my favorite line was like, "Yeah, you're not having the same problems. You're creating all new ones. You're creating all new ones
for sure."
I don't know if that's probably a terrible Goldblum impersonation.
I mean, maybe a little bit better than mine. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But yeah, I don't hate Goldblum in this. You know, I should put a little asterisk on it. I don't think it kills the movie necessarily. I think the screenplay itself kills the movie, in my opinion. Which we haven't really led on to our like overall opinions. JP is more positive on this movie, and I'm a little bit more like mid to negative on it. So we'll get into that a little later on. But yeah, I don't think it kills the movie. I think there's other reasons for that. Julianne Moore plays Sarah Harding. The role was originally offered to Juliette Binoche, which I think would have been very interesting and different.
I literally have no idea who that is.
She's she's a French actress. I'm trying to think of.
I've never
her
heard that
most
name a day in
popular
my
movies. Life. She doesn't do a whole lot of like big films. I mean, she's been in a few, but like she was in the Gareth Edwards Godzilla. Is probably one of the bigger ones she's been in.
Oh, okay. Oh, is she the mom?
The English Patient. She's
is she the mom that gets killed at the beginning of the movie? Is that her?
She plays Sandra Brody. So I don't think so.
Yeah. I'm pretty. I'm almost positive that's the mom that dies in the very beginning. But I literally just looked her up.
She's in Chocolat with Johnny Depp. It's a decently known movie.
Not seen a single of her popular films.
The forgotten movie Dan in Real Life with Steve Carell. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay. Well, Steve Carell and Dane Cook. Yeah, it's like a rom-com kind of. But yeah, so she was offered the role. She did not want to do it. She, I guess, a little bit pretentiously in 2016 said that she did not like the lack of strong female characters in Spielberg films. No, Binoche. I think it was some 2016 interview, and they were asking her about maybe that, and she
sounds
was
like somebody's a little bitter that they didn't take the paycheck role.
But yeah, Julianne Moore takes the role. She had been in a few. We mentioned The Fugitive, which she was in briefly in '93. I wish she would have had a bigger role in that movie because she was really good in it. The short time she was on screen. Shortcuts, which was a Robert Altman movie in '93 as well that I have not seen, but Altman's a pretty big director. And then she was the lead in Safe by Todd Haynes in '95, which I think was probably like her big like leading role breakout. And so her and Spielberg had kind of formed a valuable friendship, and with this movie, and I think she's fine in this movie.
I was just gonna say, this might be a bit hot take, but she actually might be a worse lead than Ian Malcolm. Now, I mean, granted, it sounds like this might be a little bit easier, a little bit earlier in her career, but
it is.
I really don't necessarily love her in this movie. Like,
she's really boring in it.
Yeah, like. But
again, I always think that's the screenplay.
It might be, to be honest. But I always think, I mean, I feel like even when I was a kid watching this movie, the first scene where we meet her, where she's taking photos, I'm just like, this lady, like, she's literally taking photos of dinosaurs. Yeah. And you think that she was taking photos of, like, a kid's birthday party.
Yeah.
That's not her kid, right? It's like, she got hired to take pictures at someone else's kid's birthday party. And she's just like, oh, hey, you're here. What's up? You know, I was just like, what? Plus, you know, she also is kind of the character who gets the short straw of, like, making all the dumbest decisions in the movie, more or less. Yeah. So that never helps necessarily.
It doesn't.
You know.
But yeah, I don't think Julianne Moore's the problem, because she's obviously, like, a great actress. But yeah, definitely not probably one of her lesser performances, which I would blame on the screenplay. Vince Vaughn, Nick Van Owen. Spielberg had seen him in Swingers, which came out in '96. So Spielberg actually saw him before it released, because they used the Jaws theme in the movie, and he had to prove it. So he had already actually seen it, and that was Vaughn's first leading role. And Spielberg liked him and brought him on. And Goldblum in the one of the docs was just talking about, like, oh, he loved working with Vince Vaughn because he was really funny. So
he's great in the movie.
You gotta have that guy that keeps things light on set. So
yeah, I mean, I love. Yeah, I have no.
He's fine
issues.
in the movie. I don't have any problems with him, but he is a kind of a boring character again.
I think he's fun. I think he's fun. I like I love how fast he talks. like I don't know if he was just nervous, because this is, like, probably the biggest movie he had ever done at the time, obviously. So I don't know if that maybe was causing some of that, but I think that first scene where he's, like, trying to, like, explain all this stuff to Ian Malcolm. Ian Malcolm's just like, sure, and it's just like, it's just so it's so funny.
Yeah, I think the dynamic between Malcolm and Owen is pretty good, but keeping with that kind of group, you got Vanessa Lee Chester playing Kelly Curtis, the daughter of Ian Malcolm in the movie. Spielberg saw her at a premiere of Alfonso Cuarón's A Little Princess in 1995, where she was in a supporting role. And I thought this was cute. This is a quote from her. She said, "As I was signing an autograph for him," that being Spielberg, "he told me one day he'd put me in a film." And he did.
So sweet. So sweet.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Yep. I guess he liked her and was like, "I'm going to put you in one of my movies." And he did. Stuck to his word.
And I've never seen her anything since. So
yeah. Yeah, her career kind of sputtered out after this. She was in a few movies before this, and then it kind of, I don't know what happened. I guess people saw her in this and were like, maybe not.
I think
she's fine in it.
Yeah, I think as opposed to Julianne Moore, who I just don't think was the right actor for the role. Mm-hmm. I could see an argument for her role being the weakest part of the movie, and I don't think it's her fault. Yeah. I think she plays the character as well as she can.
Yeah, she's going for it. She's rolling the eyes. She's being upset with her dad.
She really is just there to be the inciting incident, like for Ian to end up on the island. Like, let's just be honest.
She's a prop. She's a prop.
She is a plot device more so than a character, and again, not her fault at all. I think she does great for what she's given, and I definitely would agree.
Screenplay.
Sure, yeah. I'll give you that.
I don't know. I guess I don't like David Koepp's screenplays. I don't know. I need to look up at his filmography and see what else he's done, and see if it really is like a Koepp problem for me.
Well, I also saw in the crew part, I'm assuming it's the same David Koepp who was part of the second unit director for some of this stuff, which, for those who don't know, the second unit usually does a lot of like the big action sequences that involve a lot of stunts. So that way your main director can focus on like the main scenes with the main cast, and then your stunt doubles and your second team all do the other stuff. So so he probably directed a lot of the really cool action sequences we get in this movie.
So I will. I don't remember if I had this in the outline or not, but it might not quite be that. So what Spielberg was doing for this movie to really like keep it rolling was they were doing like 30 to 40 setups every day. So they would be like there was an instance in the dock where they were on like a little creek river, and so they would film. They would set up on one end of it and be filming, to the off to the right in that direction, and then while they were filming that, they would already be setting up the next setup on the other side of the creek, facing the other direction.
That's actually insane. Because
so they would just move from one to the next and keep filming. And so that it's probably something like that. Like Koepp is the one that wrote it and knows what needs to be happening next, and so he's probably going off with the second unit to set up for the next scene before Spielberg gets there. That would be my guess. Because in the docks, whenever there's a big action set piece, you always see Spielberg there. If you watch like the making of docs, which I did, so that would be my guess. There is another dude that did like the aerial directing, second unit directing. Spielberg doesn't usually do those. He usually has like a guy come in to do like the helicopter scenes and stuff like that. But one more on the good guy side was Richard Schiff as Eddie Carr, kind of a non-character.
He's fun. He's fun. I like he's kind of like the. You know who he reminds me of? I'm thinking just now. If you watch like Atlantis: The Lost Empire, he reminds me of Mole, the French guy. Like he's just like He's just like this like nervous little shifty guy who. You know what
I thought when I saw him holding a gun? I was like, yeah, that guy's definitely getting eaten by dinosaurs.
Yeah, I will say, even as a kid, the scene where he's trying to grab the rifle and it's caught in the netting is the most excruciating part of this entire movie. Every time I watch it, I'm just like, just get it out, man. It's just stuck. It's stuck on the front sight post. It's not that serious.
So that's all the good guys. I don't really have any notes on Richard Schiff. He like. I feel very neutral about him. Arliss Howard plays kind of our main protagonist as Peter Ludlow. Gary Oldman was unavailable for the part, and I think that's a huge shame because I think Oldman would have been
he's
so much better because he's Gary
Oldman.
I
wonder what he would have been filming at this time. Maybe like Leon the Professional.
I don't remember. It could have been. I'm wondering if it was Coppola's Dracula.
It could have been that. It could have been. Cause I think I saw in the notes that this was in production in '95, so it could have been Leon the Professional. Could have been Fifth Element, maybe.
Yeah, Coppola's Dracula is '92, so I don't. It wouldn't have been that. Early. Yeah,
I feel like it was probably either Leon or Fifth Element because those have probably been filming around the same time, but.
Yeah, it could have been, but he was not available. Unfortunate, because I think Arliss Howard is a little bland as a villain.
It's funny because visually, I feel like he looks like the Gary Oldman we have at home. You know?
Well, he's not British, and he's putting on a British accent. So
yeah,
I don't know if that has something to do with it, but
maybe. I feel like he does well as like the slimy John Hammond, you know, like you. Yeah. He's the character you're like, okay, I can't wait for this guy to die. Like he's stupid. He's He doesn't care about anybody. You know,
you definitely want him to die. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're like when he gets his comeuppance, I'm like, and also he dies in like, I'm sure we'll get into this in the plot, but he dies in like the most like, just, I don't even know how to describe it. Just like the little boy little way, man. I don't know, man. He goes out like a child. Like it's kind of embarrassing, to be honest, but I think it really fits the character really well.
Yeah, definitely goes out like a punk for sure. But yeah, Arliss Howard, Spielberg also brings him back for Amistad, which is his next movie. And another one he brings back for Amistad is Pete Postlethwaite as Roland. He plays Roland Timbo in this, brings him back again in Amistad. This dude is just so good. You know what I watched earlier this year with my son? We read the book and then we watched the movie, was James and the Giant Peach. And Pete Postlethwaite like shows up for just like 2 or 3 minutes as this like magical guy that gives James like these magic not beans but whatever they are. And he's like, as soon as he pops up on screen, you're like, this dude is crazy and magical, and like he just like carries that. I don't know, he's just really, really good in whatever he ends up in. He is the testosterone to the 10th degree in this movie. He is amazing. Oh yeah,
I love that scene where he's like, where are you going? To collect my fee, Mr. Creedy. To collect my fee. You know, he just dude,
he owns it. Every time he's on screen, he's like, he owns it. He was the one I was talking about, of like, he's probably my like the one guy that's like a side character that I feel like is actually like, I don't know if he's just like better developed as a character in the screenplay or if he's just like such a good actor that he makes you feel like he is. I don't know. It's hard to say, but he's really just now kind of breaking out in film. He did a bunch of British TV work before this, and then in '93 he was in The Name of the Father, and then The Usual Suspects in '95.
I think one of my favorite performances that he has, again, just one of those like just iconic character actors. I can't think of any leading man roles that he did, but he, you know, every time he pops up in a movie, it's a good time. I really love him in Romeo plus Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann version. I think he's like the apothecary.
I haven't seen that.
So he's not in it very much. He's either the apothecary or the friar.
He's Father Lawrence.
Yeah. Okay, so he's the friar that marries them, and he's great. He's great. Yeah. He's like one of those actors where you're like, I feel like he was born to read Shakespeare. You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I am. He really hasn't done a whole lot recently. Like, well, he's
dead. So.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, in those last years,
right?
Like, he really wasn't working as much. Like, into the later 2000s. He had cancer,
so I don't think he could. You know.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like, so in 2010 he was in The Town, and Inception.
Yeah.
And so like those are really like the last two. I'm just all that to say, it's a shame like that we didn't get more Pete Postlethwaite later in his life.
I thought you didn't know that he had passed away when you were like, he hasn't really done a lot recently. I'm like, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. But no, he passed away, what, a couple years ago?
I think it was
2011.
Least, I was gonna say it was at least a decade.
I thought it was
ago.
more recent than that. I guess that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, those really were like right there at the end for him. That's where I was off.
It makes Inception a lot more awkward to watch because his character's like on his deathbed the whole time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah. All that to say, Pete Postlethwaite, fantastic. In fact, Steven Spielberg, in an interview, said that he was one of the best actors he ever worked with.
I believe it.
Yeah, and so, yeah. Love Pete Postlethwaite in this movie. Roland Timbo, pretty good character in an otherwise, like, bereft of good character script, in my opinion. His right-hand man is played by Peter Stormare as Dieter
Also
Stark.
iconic in this movie. I love his character in this movie. Yeah. He's so funny.
What's funny is he had just been in Fargo in '96, and he played this like psychopathic brute of a man.
Well, but I will say this as well. Technically speaking, I don't think his character is Timbo's right-hand man.
No? Yeah, I mean, you have Ajay, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ajay's kind of his, like, pack mule second-in-command guy. I don't... Maybe I'm just not remembering correctly, but, yeah.
They kind of both are. I guess, like, he is more upset that Ajay dies.
Yeah.
At one point, but yeah, I think Stark is one of his main guys on his crew.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the only other guy that you know his name. But yeah, I was just, what I was gonna say was that he's just been in Fargo as this psychopathic guy, and he's really only slightly more likable in this movie, which is, I just think is funny.
Yeah, he's another one of those characters that his death scene, you're like, yeah, he deserved it.
Yeah.
You know, he was...
He poked the compy too much.
Yeah, man. He pushed him.
Back.
He pushed him to the edge. You know, it's It's kind of like one of those scenarios where it's like, you know, somebody keeps like provoking some kind of like like a dog or a cat or some kind of wild animal ends up getting hurt. You're like, I mean, look, we told you not to do that. Yeah. You know, but it's actually pretty excruciatingly painful to watch too, because it's a pretty prolonged sequence of like
it is
him getting killed by all the compies, you know.
Yeah,
like I remember even as a kid, like the scene where they're like all over his back and everything. I'm just like, oh gosh, it just makes you cringe a little bit, but he sells it, man, 100%.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The one that bites his face and he's just like you know, just so good.
Oh, we'll definitely talk about that when we get into the production, because that's a pretty funny little thing. You have Harvey Jason play Ajay. I don't really know him from anything else. I don't know if
he has one of the most iconic lines in the movie. Don't go into the long grass.
That's true.
Don't go into the long. Oh, dude, so good.
I almost wonder if he was more of like a stage actor or maybe a TV guy, because I don't really recognize his filmography at all. The only other really like person of note that doesn't have a whole lot to do, he has a few like, I guess, like exposition lines as Thomas F. Duffy as Dr. Robert Burke. The thing of note for him is he kind of plays a replica of Robert T. Backer with his beard and cowboy hat, which was like the rival colleague of Jack Horner in the paleontology world. So, you know.
That is kind of funny considering what happens to his character.
Yeah.
But he's one of those other people that I didn't know I couldn't remember the character's name, but is definitely one of the visually iconic. Yeah, I think he's one of the visually iconic characters in the movie for me. Yeah. Just with the hat and the beard and just a couple of scenes he has, you know. He's great. He's great.
Yeah. And then the last few I have on my notes, you have some returning characters. Richard Attenborough back as John Hammond for 2 scenes, really. Like I almost would bet that he was on set for like 1 day and they filmed all the stuff and you know, gave him his check and let him go home. And he's fine in it. You know, he's perfectly good. He's just doing, you know, John Hammond again. And then you have the 2 kids from the first movie back.
Like
Joseph Mazzello as Tim and Ariana Richards as Lex. They're in one little scene. But I did think it was funny in one of the making of, Mazzello was talking about how he just kind of saw it as Spielberg giving him a graduation present because it paid for his college.
Yeah.
I thought that was fun.
Hi. Quick reminder that you, yes, you, can be a huge help to the production of this show. If you visit establishingshotpod.com/donate, You'll find out how to join the Establishing Shot family through some giving tiers starting as low as $5 a month. You heard that right, only $5 a month. And not only will you be helping me keep the show going, but you'll also get some perks yourself, like early and ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, access to a Discord server where we can chat it up about the show and movies in general, and more. Might even let you choose a movie for me to review for the show. Check out that link in the show notes to learn more. Back to the show.
But yeah, as far as, I guess we can move out of that and into production now. This is where the fun really begins, I think. Spielberg had started prepping like 12 months before and really was like sketching out scenes like 2 years out. They did a lot of like 2D and 3D storyboards and animatics to kind of like make, because one of the things is like they're still doing a mix of practical and CGI effects, and so they really worked hard on the front end on this one of like getting all of their scenes kind of laid out on storyboards and animatics so they could know, like, they could basically minimize the amount of CGI they were going to need. Which is really like, it saves time in post, but also like more importantly for production money to not do more CGI. So they did a lot of that. And then, yeah, they start in September of 1996 shooting. I saw I can't remember who it was in the doc, but they were talking about they originally were thinking about New Zealand, but that would be too expensive, kind of, so they just kind of dropped that idea. They went back to Kauai in Hawaii and shot some scenes, but most of the location shooting was done in the redwood forests of North California. I think a lot of it is in Eureka, California, in fact, which is like north of San Francisco, basically. Yeah, Rick Carter, production designer, was just talking about how the dinosaurs' natural habitat is really more forest, like we see in this movie, than jungle. So they were just kind of trying to be, I guess, more scientifically accurate, but also like redwood forests are like really cool. They look cool.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's like one. That is one thing that I have gotten to see in my lifetime is redwood forests, and they are really cool. Those trees are humongous, and which is very fitting for dinosaurs to have some of the biggest trees.
Yeah, very fitting for Planet of the Apes as well.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, production design. Stan Winston is back doing the robotics. They used them as much as possible so that the actors could have real interactions with the dinosaurs. Anytime there's an up-close shot, it's usually a robot, usually an animatronic, I should say, dinosaur. Wider shots, probably CGI. But yeah, Winston talked about working on smoother movements for the dinosaurs. You've got, I mean, really like all kinds of different animatronics. So you have like the full-bodied ones. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of the stuff they did with raptors. They would have, you're only seeing like the top half of the raptor on screen. So they'll have like, it's basically like the top half of a raptor, and then like you can see all the like gears and pistons down below in the making of docs.
I think it's really interesting that, you know, I think in the first film, the raptors are like the main kind of dinosaur that the characters interact with. Like they're the main threat. Right. With this film, I feel like it's much more T-Rex heavy, obviously. But they still had to give the. I mean, they had. I mean, people would have rioted if they didn't have the raptors, so they had to give them something, and they do have one of the most iconic kind of sequences of the movie. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to see them, but it is interesting how they did kind of really mainly use them for that one kind of main sequence and set piece, you know? Yeah. And then I think of like, and then I can't honestly, and you think of like the third movie, like they're in there a little bit, but definitely that's I mean, the Spinosaurus is the main. Thing for that.
I like a good Spinosaurus. It was pretty cool.
It was.
I did rewatch the third one too. So yeah, we can talk about that later. But I mean, yeah, the Raptors are probably like the most CGI'd, because in this movie they're like moving and jumping around a lot. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of CGI for the Raptors, I think. There's just a lot more CGI in this movie overall. Obviously they're using it for more complex movements. They do CGI. But yeah, I mean, the Stegosaurus herd is CGI. The kind of, I called it the dinosaur stampede, where they're, riding the Jeeps and the motorcycles through other dinosaurs. Like, that's all of those dinos are CGI. Obviously the T-Rex in San Diego is all CGI. There's a lot more CGI in this movie. And I want to say, I think Spielberg was talking about it's kind of almost 50-50 between real and CGI. So like I think there was around 60-ish CGI shots in Jurassic Park, which isn't very many compared to these days.
That is like
it's like nothing.
Your average blockbuster these days has thousands of VFX shots.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and really like this. So this movie has significantly more, but it's still only like several hundred CGI shots. So it's significantly more than the first one, but still like relatively like tame compared to movies today. I mean, by the time like the Phantom Menace came around, there was like a couple of thousand CGI shots, and then that kind of became the standard for big blockbuster movies. But yeah, they really like they worked on getting more like agility in the dinosaur movements. I talked about Dutra, who was the motion supervisor, worked a lot on that. And really like they just really did a lot of work to make sure that Steven Spielberg could use the cameras and the camera movements that he wanted. So, whenever he would ask them, they would be like, yeah, we'll make it work, whatever you're wanting to do. So it makes the work harder in post to make sure the dinosaurs are like look like they're actually in the scene when you're moving the camera around like Spielberg does. But yeah, it's worth it. They do a good job. ILM does a really good job.
They do
with the CGI.
And I would say at least that was kind of their prerogative going into it. I think the problem that we have a lot of times nowadays with VFX artists is that they kind of just handed stuff and forced to work with it, and with like very limited time and resources. At least in this case, it was like, firstly, you have a director like Spielberg who's going to respect his crew, but also like they're like, yeah, like we're here to support your vision, whatever you want, as opposed to how it often works these days. But
and in fact, one of the guys in the making of Spielberg was like describing something that he wanted, and the guy was like, if that's what you want, we'll make it happen. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean that when you're on a Spielberg set, that's
you kind of have to say that.
Yeah.
I know that's what I would say. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some puppetry work going on too. We talked about raptors. There's several sequences where they have like a guy like outside of the frame that has like a raptor arm that's like clawing at something with just a. And then probably the best like puppetry stuff is the comp. We talked earlier about the compies on his shirt, on Stark's shirt. So they made this like shirt that he was wearing with all these like compy puppets attached to it that they were like I guess they were moving them with like little strings or something, and then he asked for a puppet that he could control, and so the whole thing where like the compy is like pulling on his lip and stuff, he's actually like pulling on his own lip with the Compy puppet.
That just makes me love that scene so much more.
Yeah, and he said he had some like, you know, some blood capsule in his mouth, so he's like pulling on his own lip and like thirsting the blood capsule in his mouth, and like yeah.
Shout out to Peter Stormare for just 100% just sending it in that scene.
Yeah, he really sells it, because I mean, the reality is he's playing with a puppet and like biting himself with a puppet, but it looks like the Compy's really attacking him.
Yeah, he really sells the pain of it, you know.
Yeah.
And I love, you know, you say that Spielberg's kind of the king of off-screen deaths, because I really love the shot when he finally kind of goes off screen and the camera kind of pans and you start to see like
the
kind
blood
of like
coming around
red,
the log.
yeah, the red, yeah. So good, so good.
Yeah. Well, you have that. You have the blood coming around the log in the water, and then you have more blood and water when it's the paleontologist guy.
Yeah, it mixes with
the cowboy
waterfall.
Hat guy. Yeah, he that's his blood coming down the waterfall. So
yeah,
really great off-screen deaths. Like I said, the king of off-screen deaths. The other like.
Which just makes me want another. It just really makes me want a rated R Jurassic Park movie where they just go full on. Which I've heard rumors that the new one might, but I can't substantiate that. Don't quote me on that.
Whatever. Even if I still haven't seen the two most recent Jurassic Worlds, I will definitely go see Gareth Edwards' one.
Yeah, because I've heard. I think it's kind of like a low key. Not a reboot of like the whole franchise, but like it's like a low key reboot of like Jurassic World, maybe.
Okay.
I got to do some more research, but we can talk about that a little bit later. But I'm very interested.
Yeah, we were talking. I think it was before we started recording. We were kind of talking about how we both thought the Jurassic World was not bad, and then I haven't seen the most recent two. But we were both talking about how we were excited because Gareth Edwards is set to direct whatever next Jurassic World. I don't know what it's called, but there's like a new Jurassic World movie that Gareth Edwards, I think, is.
The cast is pretty solid. So. The couple shots of like the behind the scenes we've seen the couple shots from the movie we've seen so far look pretty sick.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm interested in it. But I mean, going back to this, the only other...
Oh, it's called Jurassic World Rebirth, I think is what the name of it is.
Well, then, yeah, that's in the name, that it's going to kind of reboot it, I guess. Which it probably needs, because from what I can tell, the last two have not been well received.
Yeah, I heard... I was kind of vaguely interested in seeing Dominion, but I started hearing it was really bad and didn't go see it.
I'll probably watch them eventually.
I will say it says the synopsis is that it's 5 years post Jurassic World Dominion, so when dinosaurs and humans are kind of like coexisting once again. And it's just an expedition braves isolated equatorial regions to extract DNA from 3 massive prehistoric creatures for a groundbreaking medical breakthrough. So,
all right.
So almost kind of sounds a little Planet of the Apes reboot-esque in a way.
I was just thinking, like, it kind of has a... When you were talking about, like, humans and dinos living together, I was like, maybe Planet of the Apes kind of feel like...
Because basically, at the end of Fallen Kingdom, the dinosaurs that they saved from the island before the volcano erupts, they're brought to like this mansion, and this is all spoilers, but I'm saving you and your audience from having to watch these if they haven't seen them. They bring them all to this mansion, and they have like this like private auction where like these rich people are calling and trying to buy the dinosaurs.
Sure.
And they end up it's like Grady, Chris Pratt's character, is there. I think Bryce Dallas Howard's character is there, and like this little girl that's like the daughter of the person that's doing this, or like the granddaughter, and also you end up finding out that she's a clone of her mom, but she also has like partially dinosaur DNA, It was the only thing. It was the only thing in the trailers they did not reveal. I remember when the final trailer for that movie came out, which I had not watched, but then I went and saw a movie, and they had it in front of the movie. It literally spoiled 95% of the plot. The only thing that wasn't in the trailer was this, and it's like really, they don't like directly tell you, but it's like this really subtle moment where you realize that not only is she a clone of her mother, that they also spliced her with some kind of slight dinosaur DNA, because she says something along the lines of like, I have to let them all go because I can feel them, or like I'm part of them and they're part of me, or something like that. So they release all the dinosaurs. Like there's like probably a couple hundred in this mansion, and I guess that's kind of what leads to Dominion, where now the dinosaurs are like out in the wild living on planet Earth. I don't know how they get as widespread as they apparently are, but yeah. So there is like, you know, it's kind of like a reality where dinosaurs are just part of human existence again, you know.
That's
from what I understand. Something like that.
Well, I have a son and he likes dinosaurs, so I might eventually see these movies.
I'm sure he would love them, you know.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I guess like pulling us back off of that rabbit trail, back to a dinosaur stampede. Lots of CGI in the dinosaur stampede. This whole sequence, like the stuff with the Packy, which that's what I call it because I can't ever remember the full name. It's like, is it just Pachyosaurus or is it longer than that?
It might be.
It's the Friar Tuck looking one.
With the
head,
the bonehead. Yeah, it's
that kind of works.
It's Pachycephalosaurus.
Yeah, I was not going to remember the right that one. I think that's right. I think now that you say that, I think that is right. It's not though.
I just looked at the picture. It didn't look like right, but I'm trying to look at it real quick.
Well, anyway, I thought that was fine. I think one of the problems here is like they might have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves with the CGI stuff.
Oh no, it is that one. Yeah, Pachycephalosaurus. Okay, you're right.
Okay, yeah, the Packy. That's what I'd call it.
I think that's what they call it in the movie too.
Yeah, I think they say the full name like once, and then they say Packy.
Which, you know, I don't blame them.
Yeah. Which I never understood why that was like the one. There's like all these cool dinosaurs, and they're like, we've got to get the Packy. Like, ignore everybody else. Ignore all these other cool dinosaurs.
I mean,
this is
cool
the one
dinosaur.
we're after.
It looks cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool concept, you know?
Yeah. Or I think they are going after like a Parasaurolophus.
Yeah, the one
however
with the big.
You say that. Yeah, I think they're doing one of those too. But yeah, it's a lot of CGI. I think, and this is like the main sequence I can think of where it just feels like they got a bit ahead of themselves with the CGI stuff, because it just, in the first movie, the CGI stuff is so like contained.
Mm-hmm.
It's so spare, and it's mostly, other than like the Brachiosaurus reveal, it's like mostly like in rain and dark scenes. This scene just like looks so CGI'd. And I'm like, man, I think they got a little bit ahead of themselves with this. They weren't quite. It doesn't look terrible. I'll say that. There's not anything in this movie that just looks terrible. But it's just the fact that you can just tell that it is CGI in those screens, and it kind of like takes you out for half a second of the movie because you're thinking about how it's CGI and not really there. It's not a huge. That's just kind of a quibble. It's not a real big problem with the movie. I just feel like maybe they got a little too excited about how good they were at CGI before they really were. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jurassic World movies. You know, it looks incredible because the CGI is there for it.
I mean, I would argue in a way. Obviously, the CGI is better.
Right.
But in some ways it's worse because it's so much CGI. So like it's really hard for me sometimes to watch like a lot of like these really big blockbusters that come out these days, and you'll have entire sequences where everything you're seeing is CGI, and sometimes it really takes me out of the movie.
Yeah.
But
no, I agree. Yeah.
I will say, we were talking about the sound effects team. earlier, and I think about this scene again. I think they are really the unsung heroes because, again, like the big dinosaur with the big kind of crest. It's like bellows sound that it makes as it's being kind of taken down, tranquilized, and like throwing the guys around. So iconic. And then there's that scene where like, you know, it kind of lets out a long one and it cuts up to like Ian Malcolm and the gang on the cliffside watching all of it, and they're all like really upset and sad. I remember even as a kid, I was like, I'm also upset and sad. Like it felt like it felt so like the noise it made really evoked that emotion of like, man, this is like not really nice, guys, you know?
Yeah. Well, they did do a lot of work trying to make all the dinosaurs sound distinct, which I think they did a really good job of. And then, like, you know, that's a huge action set piece. I do think, like, some of the stunt work is good, like the little Jeep that the Packy crushes. They did a rig on that Jeep for it to like dent itself in, and then like, you know, pull
also,
the
Jeeps
out
are
with a cable.
so freaking cool with like all the different attachments, and there's like the scene where the guy is like on the chair and he like slides out and like it's like watching a James Bond movie or something, man. I'm like, what the heck? What are all these gadgets?
What it feels like to me is like Spielberg and his buddies like, okay, what toys do we want? Let's come up with what toys we want for merchandise, and let's make sure we get those vehicles.
I love how in that sequence it's like each dinosaur they're trying to capture, they have like a different vehicle for it.
Yeah,
because they
sounds like merchandise to me.
It's true.
And hey, you know, I'm all for it. You know, make cool stuff in your movie so it'll have cool toys. You know. Go for it.
Fair enough, yeah. But it's so sick. It's so sick.
Yeah. Kind of on the complete opposite end of the spectrum is the baby T-Rex, which is kind of a technological advancement for the like animatronics. It was a fully autonomous little T-Rex robot. No wires coming out of it, which usually these animatronic things had wires going out to like whatever was controlling them. This was a fully remote controlled little robot. So there were people like controlling its movements and whatnot they were basically like acting alongside the actors with this remote controlled baby T-Rex, and I think it works really good.
Oh yeah. Like all the
that first one. When at first they were carrying it, I was like, oh, that's, you know, pretty good job at the CGI on this dino. But then at some point I realized like, that's not CGI. That's really there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like all the main sequence. I mean, I think there's like a little bit of CGI for it, like maybe later on the ship. I think when
it's
the scene
up and moving.
Yeah. But the whole sequence where you see it out there. They have it like kind of chained up, trying to call like the parents to it, and then they rescue it. Like the scene where they're carrying it in, and it's like head and tail are going, and even when it's on the table, and like it's so good. It's all so.
Well,
good.
then when you hear too like Vince Vaughn and Julia Moore talking about like working with it, it's like it's kind of like a lesser version, but similar to like hearing the actors talk about working with E.T. Like they're like it's a animatronic like puppet, but it's also like you feel like you're actually acting with something real that has emotion, and I thought that was cool.
I think it also, I'm sure we'll get to this, but I think it also helps that it is, I mean, outside of the raptor attack scene and like everything that leads up to that, it does feature in like the most iconic part of this movie, which I think is also like very easily, arguably, the best scene in the entire film is the RV T-Rex attack sequence.
Yeah,
and I just think that they really do a great job of, from the moment that they show up with, really the moment they drive by and you hear it bellowing, and Ian Malcolm and Kelly are up in that like the high hide. We're gonna go high. We're gonna hide. Too. and they hear it go by, and she's like, "What was that?" And he just kind of has this look and you just know it's about to get bad. Something bad's about to happen, and then it starts pouring rain, and you're just like,
well, you don't know there's two at that point too. That's true. That's true. The reveal in the trailer that there's two of them, which is a great reveal. It really is.
Yeah.
Do you know what the sound was that they used for the baby T-Rex?
I have no idea.
They did this recording of a baby camel, and they kind of separated it away from its mama camel, and those were like the cries of a baby camel separated from its mom.
That's really sad, actually.
It is.
But
it is very sad.
I mean, it works.
It does work.
That's exactly what it feels like. It feels like a baby crying out for mommy and daddy.
Yeah. But let's talk about let's talk about the trailer sequence stuff in a second, because we've got to talk about these two T-Rexes. They were so heavy that they basically stayed on their tracks, and they built the sets around the T-Rexes. I think they weighed like 8 or 9 tons each. And they were just like, we're not moving these things. We're going to build a set around it, tear the set down, and build the next one around the T-Rex. So that's what they did. Even like the waterfall, the whole waterfall scene is like this portable waterfall that they built. So like, so they can move the waterfall around, and
I mean it works because they're in a cave behind it. So I'm sure that was it was like a little box they built all of that in. I'm sure.
No, it is. Yeah. But yeah, the T-Rexes were more powerful than the original and had a little bit more finesse. They were like very much smoother moving. They could like.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, do you know if they had some of the same issues? Where I know I've heard that the original T-Rex animatronic got really waterlogged, and it would kind of like shudder accident like on its own sometimes, and like make everybody crap their pants on set. Yeah.
So there was similar, but they kind of had worked out the kinks of a lot of that stuff. But yeah, you still see like people drying it off with towels, like you did in the first one. But the first one was really like they really just like barely got by with it working like it's supposed to, and
it's like one step above Bruce from Jaws,
yeah. This one, it seems like they worked out some of those kinks, but yeah, there's still because it's so heavy, so those movements are calculated by, the weight, and so when you're adding all this water, it changes the weight, it changes the calculations. But I think they did work out some of those kinks, and there is still rain in this one. There, all those scenes. So
yeah.
But the cool thing about these T-Rexes is they actually like were able to do stuff like other than just like look around and move their heads. Like they were actually like picking up stuntmen with their jaws. So like when it picks the guy out of the Jeep or the waterfall, or even like when it picks up Ludlow at the end, it's actually like the animatronic T-Rex picking up stuntmen for those. Which is really cool. Obviously, there's a degree to which, if they're ripping you apart, you have to switch to CGI. But
right.
R.I.P. Eddie Carr, I guess. But yeah, so obviously one of the pieces that they have to build around these T-Rex is the lab trailer, and yeah, they did a lot of cool stuff with these different trailers. So they obviously had kind of different trailers built for different parts of it. You have the pulling through the mud trailer, you have the rolling trailer for when the T-Rex knocks it, you have the hanging trailer, which there was a couple of those. There was one hooked to a crane in one of the Universal Studio sound stages, and then they also had one in a parking deck outside the studio. They decorated the parking deck to look like the cliff, and hung the trailer off of with a crane off the side of the parking deck, which was really cool. And they're using they do some blue screen stuff underneath the trailer as well. yeah, I thought that all that was really cool. And you know, you've got the glass shattering, tension building there. Yeah, all of the production for that is really good. It's probably the best, like, as far as like the production design goes, I think, from the whole movie. And it sounds like you agree.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely one of the strongest elements of the movie. As much as they kind of were like, well, they know we can do dinosaurs, but what can we do with them? I think they also were like, you know, because I mean, obviously the first film is set in the park primarily, so it looks like there's a lot of sequences that look like a theme park. This one's like they're actually like out in the wild, you know. So
right.
I think they do a great job of just really the set design overall, like whether it be that sequence, whether it be kind of like the little outpost where they have the raptor attack.
Yeah.
You know, just like I kind of said, like I think when they're on the second island, I think it's a better movie than the first film in a lot of ways for me personally. Like even if, you know, we can yeah, I can definitely agree that maybe the screenplay itself isn't necessarily as strong, obviously, but I guess I just really love all the big action sequences that they really swing for in this film.
That's fair.
My chair is just my chair. It's slipping down. You know, I got to get a new one. It's like it'll slowly. You probably go watch this back and you'll see me like slowly like go.
Slowly moving down.
Yeah.
Oh man. At least it doesn't drop as fast as the trailer drops around them. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will say that sequence, it's especially like the whole like going back and forth between. So I think the stuff inside the trailer is really good. The stuff outside the trailer with Eddie is fine, I guess. It feels really drawn out.
It does. I mean, I like it. Just outside of the fact that like Eddie, much like the what's the guy's Howard, like his death overall is just really wimpy, you know.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy it as well.
Yeah. I guess it's just like it's the way it's written. It's like, okay, he slips, and it's just like, I don't know, there's something about it that's like the way that they're trying to build tension. It feels like Spielberg, for some reason with this, was really lazy with how he wanted to build tension, and I feel like that's very uncharacteristic for Spielberg. He's usually like really good at finding creative ways to build tension, and just like dude slips in mud like over and over again just is really like lazy tension building to me. And it just made me roll my eyes. Like I wasn't like, ooh, is he gonna make it? I was just like, oh, come on.
Well,
like,
and I also think one thing for me, like even as a kid, I was like, why does he think he can pull that giant RV trailer
sure, with
his little Subaru Outback?
I mean, if you have like a strong enough winch, I guess you could.
Well, but the problem is even with the winch though is that his car doesn't have enough weight to be.
Yeah, you've got to winch. You've got to like tie the back end to something, which I can't remember if he did that or not. I guess not, because it starts dragging the Jeep.
Yeah. So if I remember, at first he tries to do it with just the Jeep, and then he tries wrapping around the tree stump, and then trying to use that as like another winch almost. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways.
He did what he could.
I don't know.
He was doing the best.
That kind of aggravated me because it's going back and forth between like Doofus slips in mud to like Julianne Moore on cracking glass, which is really interesting.
And that was some muddy mud, man. Like
yeah, it was.
That was like that's like the thickest, nastiest looking mud I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah. But yeah, overall it's good. My favorite part about that whole thing is it's hard to decide between like the reveal of the second T-Rex like peeking through the other window and like the glass shattering, like that whole tension building with the glass shattering. Those are probably my favorite two parts about that whole sequence. But yeah, it is a long sequence because from like T-Rexes show up and peek in the trailer to like trailer finally falls and they get pulled up is like it's a good little chunk of time.
It feels like almost like I would say like from them when they start doing like the little surgery to fix the baby's leg to that. I mean, it's got to be like 20 minutes.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying like
if not maybe longer.
There's several times in the movie where it feels like those sequences are just like way too drawn out. Like this, to me, it's like if this was like an hour 45-minute movie instead of like over 2 hours, because this is the longest of these movies. Like I think this is even longer than Jurassic World. It just feels like they could have shaved off and made it a little bit tighter. I don't know. But yeah, the other like set piece that I thought was like really, really cool design was the raptors in the grass. Just like great, good stuff. They actually like grew that grass to the right height for that scene, and then they had like mowed down the lanes for the raptors to go down. They mowed down the lanes, and then they put the tracks in, and they had the raptors on their tracks going through the grass. And then in post, ILM went back in and animated the grass back in, and then obviously had it animated.
Which I feel like
going down.
I feel like you can like with the eye I have now.
Yeah,
I feel like you can definitely tell it's like a little bit of CGI. But dude, the
in
wide
the moment,
shot
though, it works.
of the wide shot, well, because it's dark,
right?
You know something bad's gonna happen because the guy notices it and he's like, "Don't go into the long grass."
Yeah,
dude, that wide shot where it's kind of a little bit of an aerial shot and you just see.
Oh yeah.
You just see all the lanes of grass being like to just you. I mean, like, oh man, there's so many people about to die.
Yeah, it's great. But then again, like when Malcolm and Harding and Kelly get to like I don't even know what that is, like the outpost or whatever. The whole like raptor chase is just like, it was another like eye rolling thing, because it's like these are incredibly like physically impeccable and smart beings, and just nothing that happened made sense to me. Like there's a raptor standing right in front of you. It's supposed to be this like super smart pack hunter, and yet like you can fend it off with like a broken off door. I'm just like, I'm not buying it. Like, and it was like really drawn. Another example of like, this is like really drawn out. Like that whole sequence is like feels forever long before they finally like get in the chopper. She defeats the raptor with the power of with gymnastics.
Gymnastics.
And then he's like, "They kicked you off the team, huh?" And I'm just like, God, I'm not buying that. Like, I don't know how old she's supposed to be. 13-year-old girl is like.
She definitely looks a lot older than the character she's supposed to be playing, for sure.
Gymnastics kicks this raptor. Like, I'm not buying it. Like,
she built up some momentum, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I that's another one of the parts of the movie where I'm like, I do agree, like, it is pretty silly. As much as I do love the movie, I can admit that it does have its flaws, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's just like, I don't know. I guess like my main issue is like you build the raptors up to be these like incredibly like powerful and smart like pack hunters, but then like you can just like get away from them so easily over and over again. I'm just like not buying it.
I just remember the scene where they're like digging under the door and they turn around and the raptor's digging and they start digging faster. Oh, it's so silly, but I love it.
And right when they're like starting to get where they can get under, the raptor's like,
right,
hello.
she's like, I love how she peeks under like 2 or 3 times, and when she finally goes to go under, the raptor's like, rawr, it's great. It's so great.
Very silly sequence, but the reveal of the raptors in the grass is is visually like incredible. So,
and I think I do remember this scene. I think probably one of the best like tension building moments is a scene where is it Ian Malcolm's in like the Jeep, and it's like trying to come through they kind of repeat like the broken glass thing, where it's like kind of starting to get its snout like through the glass of the Jeep, and I think that's a good sequence.
Yeah, that was a not a CGI raptor. That was like a practical raptor, which is cool. And I think that's one of the scenes where like there's like literally a dude with like a raptor arm on his arm.
Because all you really see is
like
its head and like a little bit of its neck, and it's like trying to like get
and there's
through
a
the little
claw,
hole that it made.
and that's literally like
that.
a dude with his arm and a raptor arm. Like,
I believe it.
It looked great on screen. It's just funny to watch it in like the making of, because it's just like some dude bent down like out of frame.
That's literally the entirety of cinema, bro. Is like
movie magic.
Yeah,
movie magic.
Yeah. It's gonna look silly. You just got to know that like most of the time it's gonna look amazing on screen. But if people really knew some of the silly stuff that goes on behind the scenes, oh my gosh.
Yeah. There are some miniatures, like the Jurassic Park Stadium shots are. That's a miniature little set. And then the boat crashing into the dock is also a miniature, which is pretty cool, because it looks really good, I think. But I guess the last like production thing to talk on is the T-Rex in San Diego. Spielberg always wanted to end with a Rex in the city as kind of a homage to other big monster movies like King Kong and Godzilla. And apparently there's this one called Gorgo from 1961 that I've never heard of before, but apparently has a big monster in a city. So I'll have to look it up now. They at one point they abandoned this idea in pre-production. They were going to have the kind of climactic ending sequence was going to be them leaving the island on the helicopter, and then the pteranodons attack the helicopter. Which I think would have been a pretty cool scene, because we don't get, in really like all three of the first movies, you don't really get much pteranodon. You get some in the three. Yeah, that's true. You do get a good long sequence in 3. Now that I'm thinking about it,
and also another great reveal
really
scene.
Great reveal.
Yeah.
Oh, you were saying the same thing. Ditto.
I was literally saying I love what he
coming out of
his
the
face.
Like fog.
He's like,
oh man,
it's a bird cage, and yeah.
Well, like you have the first time you see the pteranodon is like it's like walking on the bridge out of the fog. It's really creepy.
Yeah, I feel like that definitely. I mean, even like there's a little bit of in Jurassic World. I don't remember much in Fallen Kingdom, and I don't know about Dominion, but I feel like there's definitely a missed opportunity in the franchise for more of the flying dinosaurs, because in a lot of ways they are some of the most terrifying, especially for how large they are. Like if those things still existed today, it'd be over.
Yeah.
We would live underground. You know what I mean?
Because like when it's in Jurassic Park 3, when it's like coming out of the fog, it looks so freaking creepy, and it's almost like it reminded me of like a vampire, like with its like cloak coming out of like some fog, and those things are big and scary and vicious, but yeah. I remember in the first book there's like a whole sequence where they're in the bird cage. That's another thing that they waited until the third one to use something from the first book. But yeah, like I forgot to mention this, but the Compy attack for Stark is kind of a callback to how John Hammond dies in the first book. He's kind of picked apart by Compies in the first book,
as opposed to picked apart by legal fees.
Yes, legal fees and some unnamed sickness. At least I don't remember them saying what he's sick with, but yeah, that was the plan. They were going to have the flying dinos attack the helicopter. Instead, they end up going back to the T-Rex, Spielberg decides kind of on a whim, like, no, we're gonna still do the T-Rex at the end.
Which, to be honest, I feel like the helicopter attack would have been a lot harder to do.
It would have been harder
with
to do
the technology at the time.
And to be fair to Spielberg, who it's like half he just really wanted to do a dino in the city, which is fair. I mean, fair enough. You want to do a cool set piece in the city, fair enough. But also, like, to be even more generous, like, you do kind of have already an emotional attachment with the T-Rexes, you know, with them trying to get their baby back. So it does, like, add an extra, like, emotional element to a reason to bring it back.
I think it definitely would have been weird to end the movie on the helicopter attack, knowing that both T-Rexes and the baby have been captured. And I feel like that would have just kind of left that plot thread just, like, forgotten about. And so I do think, as much as it is made fun of and as much as people hate it, I do think this was the right choice.
Yeah. And I don't know if, like, it was just going to end with the helicopter attack and not resolving the T-Rex thing. I don't know if that's the case. But in any case, it was, like, instead of the T-Rex, like, loose in the city. So, yeah. But, yeah, they do the T-Rex loose in the city. They used kind of the northern suburbs of L.A. and Burbank and Granada Hills as the stand-in for San Diego. They closed a couple city blocks, as you do, for pieces like this. And, yeah, a lot of the crew was used as extras, like running from the T-Rex. In fact, David Koepp, the writer, he's the guy that's, like, running towards the video store, I think, and gets, like, caught by the T-Rex and thrown around. And I'm like, oh, yeah, let's rip apart the guy that wrote this screenplay.
Careful, he also wrote the screenplay for the first one too, right?
He has screenplay credit, but also they stuck to the Crichton story in the first one, and so yeah, you know, it is what it is. My favorite, the coolest thing production wise in this to me is the bus. They, like, rigged this bus to like dent itself in, similar to that Jeep with the Packy. So, like, when the T-Rex rams its head into the side, they actually, like, did that whole, you know, that the T-Rex is added in post. They had to, like, rig this bus up to, like, dent itself in and, like, blow the glass out. And, you know, you have the stuntmen on there, like, falling out of the windows and stuff. Really cool, really fun action set piece.
I love the moment where, you know, they finally get they're like, okay, we're gonna get the baby T-Rex, and that's we're gonna use to draw it away. And I love. Well, firstly, I think there was a missed opportunity to include a scene about what happens on the boat. I think that would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, there is a certain level of, like, oh, okay, I guess there's just a mystery of what happened to the crew on the boat.
I didn't really understand what happened on the boat, because the T-Rex was still in its, like, I don't know how the T-Rex got the ones on the top.
Yeah, I think that's
deck.
it's kind of one of the main plot holes of the movie is, you know, I think what happened to
my
the
theory
crew.
is that there was raptors up there, and then the raptors were, like, stowed away. So there's probably raptors in San Diego as well on the loose.
Classic. But I love when they pull up with the car, and, like, Ian Malcolm and the T-Rex, like, basically make eye contact. You know? They're like have, like, a little stare down. That's great.
And you get the rolling what is it, 76 or whatever, like the gas station thing. That was fun.
Great.
So it's, you know, it's fine. It feels like it's in a different movie in a way. But, you know, it is what it is. They had fun with it, and, you know, it does, you do get the satisfaction of the, I don't know if it's the mommy or the daddy T-Rex teaching its son to how to kill. Using, which that's actually in the book too. There's not a Ludlow in the book, but the antagonists in the book, one of them gets eaten because the T-Rex doesn't kill. They're like, in the book, it's like the T-Rex is carrying the guy, and you hear him screaming, and the people, like the good guys, are like wondering, like, he's not dead. Like, what is the T-Rex doing? And then you come to find out he was taking him back to his nest to teach his baby how to kill. Start teaching his baby. It was like brutal. But yeah. Sounds. More ambient sounds here for the forest. They talked about that. They did some more recordings of trained walruses. Which, have you ever seen all the noises that a walrus can make?
Definitely heard some, but I'm sure it's pretty extensive.
There's a lot. I think I talked about that on the Jurassic Park episode, but they did some more recordings of walruses. They did. I think the Stegosaurus sound was recordings of cows through these big tubes on Skywalker Ranch. We talked about the baby Rex. Speaking of baby camel, when the compies are all running, it's just like various types of birds flapping, which makes sense. And then the strangest one of them all is that the Pteranodon sound is the sound of I can't remember if it was hymns or I'm blanking on his name. I'm trying to look for it. Ron Judkins. It was either Judkins or Hims. He talked about, like, he usually doesn't like to use inanimate stuff, but he used his dental floss, like pulling out slowly his dental floss for the sound of the Pteranodon, which is fun. It's always fun to hear, like, all the random ways they get sounds for the sound effects. But one thing that we've kind of touched around but haven't directly addressed is Kaminsky's work in the cinematography. He was going for, like, a very moody feel. He kind of talks about that in one of the making ofs. And obviously, like, the atmosphere of this whole movie is very different from the first movie. You know, in the first movie, it's a theme park. In this movie, it's like, it's kind of nature evolving in the wild, kind of going back to that, a little bit darker in tone. It almost feels a little bit like a war film in the way that Kaminsky kind of lit it and shot it in a lot of ways. The movie doesn't look bad, obviously. So it's hard to, like... Yeah. It's hard to find anything to, like, really critique as far as, like, Kaminsky's work on the film.
I mean, you're not gonna... It's not gonna be a movie that gets posted on, like, a cinematography...
Right.
Lover account on, like, Instagram or something, but... I think he does a really good job of capturing, like, the deep, dark greens of the natural areas and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. They finished filming in December of 1995. They kind of finished, I think I wrote down 9 days ahead of schedule. I guess it was all those 30 to 40 sets set up.
When you're a professional, like, which I wanted to say on that, like, just so people are aware, I mean, like, 10 setups a day is, like, a lot. So the fact that they were doing 30 to 40, that is insane. But honestly, it's a testament to Spielberg and his team and his level and his ability to kind of really get people moving.
Yeah, Kathleen Kennedy, she wasn't a producer, but she was an executive producer for this one. She was talking about how, like, Spielberg is just so, like, organized and in control of stuff like that it just works because he just knows what he's doing.
I mean, a massive movie like this ending even 1 day ahead of schedule is a miracle, let alone almost 2 full weeks ahead of schedule. I mean, that just really speaks to his professionalism and his commandeering of a set, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As far as post-production stuff, the score, John Williams obviously does a great job. I thought it was interesting. John Williams was talking about how Spielberg never says, like, I don't like that when he's listening to his samples. But he'll like make suggestions and Williams was basically like just kind of saying like Spielberg's really nice and he's never gonna say like that wasn't good, and so I really have to like pay attention to like his suggestions and his like reactions and responses to like get a feel for like what direction he wants me to go in. But yeah, Spielberg talked about Max Steiner, who was a big composer back in the day. He did movies like, he did the King Kong score, like movies like Gone with the Wind and like just big movies like that. He did the score for. But so he was really looking for like a King Kong-esque jungle rhythm in a lot of the movie for this score, and so Williams definitely does that throughout the film. It's definitely like a darker, more ominous score, I think, than Jurassic Park, which is more of like a all-field kind of score. In that episode, I talked about how Williams was like a lot of the score. He was going for like this kind of cathedral kind of sound of like religious experience, you know, seeing these dinosaurs. And it's just different. Spielberg actually said he prefers the score in this movie because it's more complex and has more themes. Yeah, which I guess I get that. But I mean, to me, it's just like iconic score of the first one.
Right. I mean, I was going to say you have that, obviously, that iconic main theme, probably one of the best things that John Williams has ever created. But I will say there are like two motifs from this movie I remember very distinctly. There is like a lot of like kind of like almost like Congo, like drumming kind of like percussive stuff. But there is that one main motif that is kind of like I don't even know how to describe it, but I always remember the scene where after the trailer falls and they climb up the rope and she goes like Julianne Moore's character goes to like kind of get up the cliff and you see the hand reach out, you know, just like this wet hand of like Peter Postlewaite's character and helps him up, and there's that theme that plays in that part that's like this it's like almost like the two groups coming together to like survive, you know, kind of vibe. And like I can't hum it or anything, but I can very distinctly remember the sound of that because it happens a couple other times in the movie too. That same motif, which I think is the one that I think sticks out the most. But I don't think there's I mean, I really would. I mean, now I'm interested to go listen to the score just for the sake of listening to it if it is Spielberg's favorite. But there's definitely nothing even close to approaching that iconic you know. But I do think that's really fascinating where you say that in the first film, you know, he went with like kind of a religious, kind of awe-inspiring sound because that is not just what the people in the movie experience, but also what the audience members experience. This is like some of the first fully CGI, you know, anything. Like it's not like the very, very first. There was a couple other things that came out before that. Like, you know, you have this The Young Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, or The Adventures of Young Sherlock Holmes, had like a stained glass like creature. You had The Abyss with the water effects. No, not at all. The Abyss with the water effects. You know, but this is definitely one of like.
It's a real creature. You know,
it's in
the real world
for sure. And so I think it is interesting that was what he was inspired by. I think it really suits. But then also, it's for this being a darker movie that's more focused on the adventure side of it, the action adventure. It does fit for sure.
And you know, Spielberg I find that Spielberg in the things that he says are his favorite is always interesting. I almost feel like he has a bit of contrarian in him for stuff
Sounds like
this.
He and I would get along great.
And I think it's like he just like, I don't know, it's kind of a thing where maybe he just really likes the drums, like the King Kong-esque jungle rhythm, and so he's like, oh, this is my favorite because it has that in it. But anyways, there were we talked about one scene that was cut, the pteranodons attacking the chopper. There was also another pteranodon scene that was cut where they were like I don't know what characters it was supposed to be, but they were like basically hang gliding away from some raptors, and then some pteranodons attacked them on the hang gliders. So that wasn't on here.
Which I feel like he kind of brought that into 3, yeah.
Yeah, which that's actually a pretty good sequence, I think, in 3. The scene, there's a extended scene with Ludlow in a board meeting that's like he's doing more like exposition on why they need to do what they're doing.
Board meeting stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's actually like a scene where they introduce Roland Timbo. Ajay comes to like recruit him. You can watch it in the on the Blu-ray or DVD in like the deleted scenes. He like it's. I feel like it would have added a little bit more because I feel like you get thrown in with Timbo.
He kind of just appears.
Yeah, he just appears, and you can kind of tell. It seems like there's something missing. Like I'm supposed to already know who this guy is.
Yeah, you're supposed to already know that he's like the badass of the movie, but
right. But it kind of is like throws you off for a second because there was this original scene that introduced him, and actually like introduces him in a better way for what his character arc ends up being, because it makes when the way they introduce you to him in the movie, you're just like, oh, this guy kind of sucks. He just wants to kill T-Rexes, and every other animal. Well, in the movie, like you see him basically like kind of like get revenge on these jerks in this. I don't know. He's somewhere in like maybe South Africa or something. There's these like jerks basically sexually harassing their waitress, and he goes over and like beats the guy up.
Classic.
Yeah, and so it's like, oh, that would have been great. It would have made more sense for his character. It would have showed you like, yeah, he's kind of like a jerk as far as like killing animals maybe goes, but also like he has this soft side to him because there's that scene.
To be fair, he doesn't kill them.
Well, yeah, he doesn't the T-Rexes, but he does other animals that he hunts. Because there's the scene where he goes up to Sarah Harding, and he's like checking on her and making sure she's okay, and it just feels off in the movie. But if you would have had that scene to introduce him, it would have made more sense. So like in hindsight, I was like, oh, he's actually like an okay guy, you know. But you know, we don't have that scene in the movie.
Yeah, doesn't he make some comment about like, are you hurt? Are you bleeding?
Yeah.
She's like, oh, it's not my blood.
Yeah. He's like checking on her. He's like being a good guy, and it feels off in the movie because you haven't had anything like that to that point.
I think it would have been interesting, like seeing him like take on some poachers or something.
Yeah.
Or something like that, and then he like gets a call about the opportunity. But I definitely agree with you. I think it would have been nice to have a scene like that kind of establishes his character a little bit more. But I think the trade-off there would have been they would have had to kind of force him into the plot more, where he would have I feel like something like that would have been great if he was more of a main character instead of the side character that he is. Yeah. You know,
I feel like he should have been more of a main character because
that's very true
of how awesome Pete Postlethwaite was.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it, but also I think
they should have just rewritten everything for him.
I think he would have provided a much better kind of antithesis for Ian Malcolm. Maybe I think seeing the two of them go head to head more would have been nice.
Yeah, maybe so. So those are some of the scenes cut in editing. They do about 6 months of post work. You know, a lot of CGI work that has to be done. They obviously like worked closely with the special effects team throughout the whole process, really, so that they could have like good continuity between the practical and CGI dinos. And there's actually about 70 to 90 blue screen shots in this movie too. So a good bit of like adding in those backgrounds too from the blue screens, which I don't know at one point did it change from blue screens to green screens, because you don't ever really hear blue screen anymore. Do you know anything about that?
It really kind of depends.
Okay, is it
blue
like
screens,
for different things?
Yeah, I think it's part of that. I think it also depends on what you're doing. It depends on also it's like depends on like what the characters are wearing.
Okay.
Like obviously, if there's like a movie like this where there is a lot of green that they used,
yeah,
like
okay.
they're filming in the trees, you don't want to use a green screen because then it might be harder for the VFX artists to
that makes sense.
properly cut things out. So I think technically you can really use whatever color you want, honestly. Like
okay.
Like you can use any color that's opposite of whatever you're trying to cut out.
Gotcha.
As part of your chroma key is technically the technical term. It really just depends because like even if you go look at like behind the scenes of like the Star Wars prequels or even like the Hobbit series, like there's a lot of blue screen that's still used. It really just depends on. There's like a lot of factors that can go into that, but these days they do still use blue screen on occasion, as well as green screen, even though the volume is being used more and more, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't even really thinking about like what colors are in the scene, but that makes a lot of sense.
Like with the shirt you're wearing right now, like obviously I wouldn't put you in front of the green screen. Like I'd put you in front of a blue screen because that's opposite kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Grogu Baby Yoda shirt because it's the closest thing the closest shirt I had to dinosaurs. It's a green, green puppet, little and there's green puppets in this movie. So
there you go.
I
can see it. I see the vision. I see the connection.
Yeah. I need to get like a Jurassic Park shirt. That'd be a good shirt to have.
I love. There's quite a few like parody versions, but I love the one that it's like the Jurassic Park logo, but it's a xenomorph, and it says like LV, whatever the planet is, like 486 or whatever.
Yeah.
All the alien fanboys are gonna come from my head because I don't know the name of the planet, but that one's pretty sick. But yeah, I would also love a good. I don't really wear a lot of like graphic tees outside of like band merch, so because I love supporting my friends, but I think a nice like kind of shirt with a faded Jurassic Park logo would be sick.
Like a classic one that you might find at like Old Navy.
there's also a company, I can't remember the name of the website that it's on, but I see the ads for it all the time, and they have this line called American Vintage or something, and they have all these really interesting, kind of like faded designs for movies. Like they have some Lord of the Rings shirts I'd like love, and I think they have a couple Jurassic Park ones as well.
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but
yeah, there's like multiple of those.
They have like a Batman the Animated Series one I really like. I always see the ads for, and then they have quite a few Lord of the Rings shirts that I really would love to get at some point. Yeah. And they've like done some Star Wars ones now too, which look pretty sick.
Sweet. Yeah. That's really it for post production. I mean, obviously it's just a lot of CGI work. They're like if you watch some of the behind the scenes, the guys at ILM, they're basically, the interesting thing is, so when you make the big animatronic stuff, you're using like a wireframe and you're building a mold on top of that, and it's really kind of the same thing on the computer. Like they build the wireframe of the dinosaur on the computer digitally, and then they add like skin onto it, and then they texture the skin, and then they paint the skin. So they're basically doing the exact same thing on the computers that they're doing in real life for the animatronic robots.
Right, because that basically represents its skeletal system. So you have to. That's that. Like any CGI character you've ever seen, like underneath all those layers, it's literally a stick figure. Because that's the basis of being able to animate it, because you have your joints, So
yeah. Which it is cool to see them kind of like take you through those steps of that. If anyone ever wants to go watch like the making of
a good
stuff.
VFX pass video, like where they show you like what, especially when you see like where they started and what they ended up with, like the final project. Like I really highly recommend, if anyone's interested in seeing like the behind the scenes of VFX, if you watch Corridor Crew, the Corridor Digital's kind of like secondary channel, Corridor Crew. They've been doing for probably like 4 or 5 years now a series called VFX Artists React. They also do a Stuntman React series as well, which is really cool, where they break down like different stunts, and they'll have like actual stunt performers they're friends with kind of talk through it. But yeah, I mean they literally are all VFX artists by trade. That's what they started their channel with, like literally over a decade ago, and so it's cool to see them kind of talk down. They actually did an episode with Gareth Edwards.
Cool.
Right around when the creator
came out. Oh,
yeah. So they've been doing it long enough to where they're actually starting to get. I mean, they've had a guy from ILM on there a few times actually as well. Okay. So it's a great series. You know, it's really fun. They look at the good, the bad, the ugly, and it's just always a fun time.
You'll have to shoot me the link to that so I can put it in the episode description.
Maybe I'll try and find a couple episodes that would be kind of more related to what we're talking about.
Sure.
So I think there's a Jurassic Park episode I can try and find.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I love watching that sort of thing. And I think I mentioned in the Jurassic Park episode there's an episode of the Team Deacons podcast, which is you know the Deacons, obviously. But they had Dennis Murin on for an episode that was really cool. He's the ILM guy. So.
Hello again. Do you know how you can really support the show for free in just a few minutes or less? That's right. Just leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you listen that might allow for ratings and reviews. These really help the visibility of the podcast. In fact, just hit that pause button right now and drop the review right now. And then you can get back to the show. I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay. I trust that you went and left that rating and review now. Back to the show.
But yeah, that's it for production on the movie. I mean, they get it done. It releases the next year, 97, and in May. So the end of May 1997, this movie comes out. It's released in over 3,000 theaters, so big, wide release. And it gets $72 million on the first weekend, which was a record at the time. So that record was passed by Harry Potter in 2001, which didn't quite hit the $100 million mark. It took Spider-Man to hit that one, to get the record for the $100 million. But yeah, this one passed $100 million in 7 days, so it didn't take it long to hit that mark. But yeah, it in the box as far it worldwide, it eventually got $618 million, which not as big as Jurassic Park, but still huge box office. And I would imagine that's like probably in the 800s or 900s with inflation. I don't know if that would quite break $1 billion with today's dollars.
I still can't believe Jurassic World made $1 billion.
Yeah,
worldwide. That's insane to me. I mean, I enjoyed the movie. I was because people were really hurting.
It's a beloved franchise. People love this franchise. Even with these second, like the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 are not like super like everyone's like, oh, these are masterpieces. Like they're kind of like down as far as like what people would rate them and what critics would rate them, but they still love them.
They definitely don't get as much hate as like the Star Wars prequels and the sequel trilogy compared to the original trilogy, for sure. I feel like people are a lot softer on them, probably because it's dinosaurs, man. You know, like it's. I mean, even with this movie, with you not really loving the screenplay, like at the end of the day, like there's still some great stuff in this movie. You know,
I mean, it's even a bad Steven Spielberg movie, there's still like some stuff that you can find to like enjoy, and like just because it's Steven Spielberg's going to do something right, you know. Even in a bad movie. This one in the box office that year, though, this one was overshadowed by Men in Black and Titanic, so wasn't like the biggest movie of the year, but it was up there.
Is really funny because the original Jurassic Park totally stole the thunder for a movie. You know, actually, you know what? I'm going to talk about we're going to talk about this in the underrated movies sequence, maybe, because I think there is a movie that I really love. I think more people should see that was had the very tragic occurrence of coming out this I think the same weekend as the original Jurassic Park. So yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, just a preview. But we're next week we'll be doing our favorite some of our favorite underrated movies. Not a draft, but just like a discussion. So we'll look forward to that. This one, it was received very similarly to Jurassic Park, but probably with more criticism. I would say the general consensus on Jurassic Park was basically the same here, which were dinos great, characters not as great. Which I kind of disagreed with Jurassic Park. I thought the characters were pretty well developed and pretty good in Jurassic Park, but I do agree with it here. I don't think I do think the characters are mostly just kind of stereotypes in this one, which was kind of a general critic consensus. In fact, Roger Ebert, one of my favorite critics to read, said that they are scripted to do stupid things so that they can be chased and sometimes eaten by dinosaurs.
Fair,
which is fair. You know. The San Diego T-Rex sequence, as you alluded to earlier, didn't impress a whole lot of people. And I read too that some people were like speculating that it was done deliberately to pull the rug out from under the Godzilla remake that would release the next year. I think that's kind of a dumb speculation. Like Spielberg just crazy. Really wanted to do that.
That's another movie that I agree is I know it's not great, but I mean I
have a lot of nostalgia attached to that movie.
I am a monster movie fanboy. Okay,
I haven't watched that since I was a kid, and I don't really want to because I feel like I'll ruin it for my memory. Because I loved that '98 Godzilla movie as a kid.
Yeah, I'm very easy to please when it comes to monster movies, man.
I love that though. That's great. I don't think that's a JP flaw. I think that's a strength.
Appreciate it. Like literally, if you wanted to know like top 3 choices of like the types of movies I would love to make one day, monster movie would definitely be in the top 3. Some way, shape, or form. I would love to make a monster movie.
Yeah, that's cool. I will definitely see your monster movie when it comes out.
Thank you.
I'm speaking it into existence. It's
okay.
Your monster movie will one day be released, and I'll go see it. Just generally not great reception. People disappointed that he gave into the temptation of a lucrative sequel. But hey, even great directors have to do some money grabs sometimes too. It got one Oscar nomination.
Pay for that house.
Yeah, for real. One Oscar nomination for visual effects, didn't win. That's pretty much it for awards. Yeah, let's jump into I guess more like just key talking points from the movie. We've touched on a lot of this stuff. I did want to. Have you ever read the book, The Lost World?
I've not. One of these days I'd love to. I find myself like I don't really read a lot of fiction these days. Like I'm kind of more of like I read like a memoir, an essay, kind of a I guess like life advice kind of stuff. But I think it's like it's for me Jurassic Park is right up there with like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'd love to actually get around to reading it one day. I think I want to say when it comes to Michael Crichton, I definitely think I read like the Andromeda Strain.
Okay, yeah.
I might have read his Timeline. Breakout. Yeah, like kind of when I was like middle school or high school, I might have read Timeline. And I think there was like one more obscure book that I don't think has ever been made into a movie that I think I read of his, but I can't remember what it is right now.
Yeah. I read Jurassic Park and The Lost World. I listened to the audiobooks actually. I've been doing that with a lot of these Spielberg adaptations. I've been listening to the audiobooks, so been getting a lot of books in this year that way of just listening to the Spielberg adaptation books. The Jurassic Park I thought was great. It was really well paced as a novel. Interesting ideas. It delves into like the chaos theory stuff a whole lot more with Ian Malcolm. Yeah, great characters. The Lost World is kind of a step down. You can almost tell that like he didn't plan on writing this book, and he's kind of grasping at like what is he going to do with it. It's definitely a step down. It's not a bad book, but it's not a great book either. It's just kind of okay. It's not as well paced. It's not as thrilling. It really, the book, I think the sequel book suffers from a lot of things that the sequel movie does, which is like, okay, we've seen the dinosaurs now, and we've had a thrilling like time with them, and now like the luster of that is kind of worn off some. But yeah, in the book, there's like, it's very different. There's two kids. Kelly is one of them, but she's not Malcolm's daughter, and Arby is a boy. They're like middle schoolers who they do sneak onto a trailer. It's this guy, Dr. Thorne, is an engineer, and Eddie Carr is actually his assistant. And they're actually going with Ian Malcolm to rescue this guy, Dr. Levine, who's this like really rich paleontologist guy. He's comes from money and is like going on this crazy expedition. And Ian Malcolm goes with Thorne to try to rescue him, and find out like he's actually like not trying to be rescued. He's just trying to observe the dinosaurs.
So they kind of replaced that plot line with him
with
going
Sarah.
to get Sarah.
Yeah. Sarah shows up. Sarah's in the book too. Her character is. She comes later than everyone else, and she ends up on the boat with the antagonists of the. It's these guys, Dodgson and King. They're like a rival company to Engine, and they're trying to get on the island and steal a few eggs. And so she ends up with them, and that's how she gets to the island.
Yeah. I was gonna say real quick. I think I looked it up. I think the other book of his that I know I definitely read is called Prey, which is from 2002, and it's like about nanobots and stuff. Which it's actually really surprising when you look at his bibliography, like how many of his books have been turned into some form of visual media.
Yeah. Well, and he did. He wrote and directed a movie back in the 70s or 80s, Westworld.
Right.
But
which then got changed into the TV show, which I've seen the first two seasons, and they were both pretty. I mean, the first season's amazing.
Yeah, that's Jonathan Nolan, isn't it? Yeah. I haven't watched any of that, but yeah. But yeah, it just the book also like it's very focused on the reason that they're on the island. They wanted to study extinction and figure out what causes extinction. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of like there is like the baby T-Rex in the trailer thing happens in the book. So that's actually from the book. There's a few things that they kind of pull over. The characters really like aren't very similar from the book to the movie, even though some of them have the same names. But yeah, it's just very different. And then so you can compare this movie with the novel it's quote unquote adapted from, but then you can also compare it with the original movie, which is probably like the more apt comparison. Since like the book was written so that they could make a sequel movie. But they really, I don't know, that we talked about the score, how the scores are different, and I think that's a very good indicator of how like at odds these movies are with each other, and just like tone and feel. I don't know, like you watch Jurassic Park and you're like, to me, rewatching it this time, I was like, man, it just feels like it doesn't need a sequel. It feels like you get everything you want out of it. You get the awe and wonder of seeing dinosaurs like in the real world, and also like the fear of what they could do to us, and then you escape and everyone seems like they've learned their lesson, and that you should be good to go. Like, you don't need a sequel, but alas, we have one. Yeah, it's missing like the thing. So the thing that Spielberg has done really well for most of his career to this point is like mixing the emotions of fear and wonder. And you have that in the original Jurassic Park. In this one, it's just fear, and there's not really much wonder. Yeah. You talked about Sarah Harding's face, and you don't get the like awe and wonder that you get on Laura Dern's face when she sees the Brachiosaurus or the Triceratops, or any of it. It's just not there. And it's almost like the characters just knew what to expect, and you're missing that whole wonder element that's like feels essential for a movie like this. And even in an interview, Spielberg felt like this was the film's greatest mistake. And I think that's, I don't know if that's like its greatest mistake, but it's a big part of it for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. I mean, even again, just thinking about the context of the original movie, of that first scene. Yeah. Of like, they pull up in the Jeep, Ian Malcolm looks, Alan Grant looks over, turns Sattler's face, and like, they just all like their reactions. They just sell it, and then also like, and they're almost kind of very similarly, like they're almost like the audience surrogate in that moment, because then we have that same reaction when we finally see.
Yeah, when it turns the camera.
Yeah, when we finally see it for the first time. And so I almost can understand why, again, like in this movie, it wasn't a question of can they make the dinosaurs, it's what can they do with them. And so I think there probably was a certain subconscious level of like, oh wow, more CGI dinosaurs. Like it's not as impressive as it was the first time, And I think that's true for any time there is a new breakthrough in VFX specifically. Like, the first time there's a CGI character in a movie, like in The Adventures of Young Sherlock Holmes, incredible. Or, James Cameron's The Abyss, the water effects, incredible. Dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, incredible. Even now, like, I feel like the very first time I saw like the volume used in a very prominent way on like The Mandalorian, like, it was super, super, super cool. And then, but inevitably what happens is a new breakthrough happens, and then everyone starts using it. Yeah. And then they start overusing it, and they use it in a way in which it's not necessarily designed for. So like, the big thing with the volume, which, for your audience, if they're not familiar, is like it's basically a giant LED screen that they can project whatever they want on. So it's like you can have, instead of having to add in an environment in post, you can have your actors reacting to something in real time. It's also great for real-time lighting as well. And I say that because, like, especially if you watch like a lot of Disney Plus shows that were kind of came out during the pandemic years, you can tell that they really overutilized the volume, especially like Kenobi. There were so many moments in that series that just felt so cramped and so small. Gotcha. But then you watch something like The Batman. The Batman used the volume a lot as well. But the way that they used it was like the way it's meant to be used. So like there's that like iconic scene in the opening where he comes out of the shadows on the train kind of platform, and like the whole like the sequence was almost happening sideways, and the whole like back wall is the volume, but they're mostly using it as like a lighting thing, or like all the scenes of him in that kind of construction tower overlooking Gotham, all that's in front of the volume. But again, they're using it for lighting, and they're using it in a way it's meant to be used. And I think the same thing kind of happens here with the CGI dinosaurs, is that as much as I love all the extra action sequences, because they were more going for what can we make them do? And like you've said several times, it does kind of feel like they maybe overplay their hand a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe that definitely could have added to that lack of sense of wonder, because there's quite a few scenes where it's like, okay, eventually there's going to be something here that you're looking at, and even today it's hard for actors to like act against a green screen. I mean, there's that famous shot of Ian McKellen on the set of the Hobbit films where he's like sitting on this. There's a little bit of a set built, but most of it's completely CGI. Like there's all blue screens around, and he's literally sitting there like this. It's a really sad photo actually. He's just like, you can just tell he's just like, this is not what I got into acting for,
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely could. There is a challenge there for the actors themselves. It's not always like fully their fault, but that's really why you have to have a solid director who can really pull that performance out of them. And we know that Spielberg is capable, but as he said himself, maybe it wasn't his best moment in the production of this film.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I think another difference in the two movies is like the characters. There's just like so many. I don't think in actuality there's a lot more characters in this movie than
bunch of NPCs,
than there is, but it feels like there's so many more characters in this movie than the first one.
I would say there's definitely
more, but probably not a lot. Right. There's more people.
There's more people, less maybe about the same amount of characters that we actually like have any kind of interaction with.
Well, it's odd. So like this is why I think like I'm not sure how much it makes me wonder how much David Koepp actually changed from like Michael Crichton's original script, that because Michael Crichton wrote this first script, the first draft of Jurassic Park himself. They had another lady that wrote on Hook with Spielberg do some work on it, and Spielberg wasn't really happy with what she did, so then he brought on David Koepp to work on it. And I almost wonder if like he just kind of rolled with Crichton's character development in his script, and then because in this one it just feels like, I don't know, in the first one it feels like the characters are so well developed. Everyone has their like distinct, this is who this character is. They have their setup scene. You have your setup scene of Wayne Knight. You have your setup scene of Samuel L. Jackson. You have your setup scene of like the I can't think of his name, but the guy that's like the Velociraptor guy, the clever girl guy.
I can't remember his name either, but he's like the head of security or whatever.
Right. And so you have like your setup with all those characters, and then the movie like puts them in their proper place, for lack of a better word, meaning like they show up when they need to be there. You kind of get their vibe, like what they're up to, but the focus stays on like the main characters. And in this one, because they've like split up, they've the hunters gatherers thing where like it's kind of like Spielberg wanting to juxtapose these two groups of characters against each other. You kind of lose all of that. And then like on top of that, in the first movie, your action breaks are used for character development. So like anytime there's an action break, so like a few standout ones are like Grant in the tree with the kids, or Ellie Sattler with John Hammond eating the ice cream. Like you have these moments where things slow down and you develop the characters. In this movie, anytime the action slows down, there's just like exposition dumps of explaining why they're going where they're going, what they need to do next. And there's no character development. And
or you get lines like the hide. You're gonna go high, and then you're gonna hide.
Yeah, which is like a unnecessary exposition, and not even a funny joke. But I don't know. Like it's just even like Ian Malcolm in this movie, he's a different character than he is in the first movie. I've already talked about that. Like, and he ends up just kind of being this like very stereotypical Spielbergian bad father, that learns how to be a better father, but like the way things play out, like I don't know, like he doesn't develop into that. It's just kind of like, I don't know. It's just not good. Like, in my opinion, the way the characters, the only one that feels like they have an actual character arc is Roland Timbo.
Right.
Like he's the only one that feels like he starts in one place and changes and ends up in another place.
Right. He starts out like, yeah, I'm here to, kill a T-Rex, and then by the end of it, he's like, what have we done?
Yeah, exactly. And it would have even like been even better if we had that intro scene that got cut that I was talking about. It would have even more rounded out his character and given it a complete story. And I don't know, and it just kind of sucks that they just didn't develop these characters as well as they did, because there's a lot of potential with this one, I think, to have bigger and more in the action stuff. But then to me, the characters and all of that character development in the first one is like what elevates it to the next level. And in this one, it not only like doesn't elevate it, but it drags it down a little bit to me, where like I can't quite enjoy the action stuff as much, because like the stakes feel so low, because who are these people, know? I don't know. I have a lot of quibbles too. I don't know. Do you want to hear any of my quibbles?
I mean, I've been hearing them all night, but feel free.
these are
feel
more
free
just
to
like
quibble away.
These are so. What I was just saying was like, I think a big issue. These are just like little quibbles, like just things that I think are funny about the plot. Like, like I just don't understand John Hammond's plan here. Like,
yeah,
like why is he sending? Like he knows Ludlow's obviously going to go to the island. Like you can tell he knows they're going. So like,
because wasn't it? If I'm remembering correctly, isn't he like trying to start his own company, right?
Ludlow is taking over his, because Hammond is his uncle.
Okay,
and he's basically like in the cut scene with the board meeting. He's basically like making an argument to the board of why they need to let his senile uncle take him out of position and put him in charge.
I just thought when they come across their camp and they like find this, like the boxes of stuff, it has like a different company name on it, if I remember, but maybe not. Or maybe it was the planned like dinosaur zoo in San Diego.
That's what it was.
Was a different
yeah.
company.
Yeah, I don't know about a different company, but he's definitely like there's literally a deleted scene, which is the board meeting scene where he makes an argument to the engine board that his uncle like is no longer fit to lead the company and he needs to take over. And but yeah, I don't understand Hammond's plan. Like, go take pictures so that people will leave the island alone. Like, that's your plan.
It's not a great plan, but I think I can understand of like of the idea of like, hey, people need to see these animals like just living their lives and need to see and just need to have an understanding of like it's best that we just let them be, it's partially as like partially as a warning, but also because I'm sure like the idea, don't just get pictures of them being majestic, also get pictures showing how dangerous they are as well, I
guess I just don't get it, like you know, and then you have like at the end, it's like he's on the news report and the quote, because I wrote down the quote there at the end. He says, if we step aside and trust in nature, life will find a way. and it's like a callback to the line from the original movie, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
He said the line, guys.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, what does that even mean? Like, if we step aside and trust in nature to do what? To keep the dinosaurs contained on this island, or that nature will find a way to bring the dinosaurs to kill us all? Like, what does that mean?
I don't know why, but that just reminds me of David Ayer's Suicide Squad, when Will Smith is like, so what are we? Some kind of Suicide Squad? Oh, man.
Oh, great line. He said it.
Hashtag release the Ayer cut.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I just watched, went and saw The Wild Robot with my wife and son. It was great, by the way. But there is
I've heard a lot of really good things.
Yeah, animation is incredible, touching story, but there is a point where, like, Roz, the robot, says something to the effect of, like, I'm a wild robot. And I was like, she said it.
What am I? Some kind of wild robot? I love a good roll credits scene. This is a little bit different, but still.
Yeah. But yeah, the only other, I'll do one more quibble. This is what I wrote in my notes. Sarah, we observe, we don't interfere. Also, Sarah charges into Stegosaurus herd and pets a baby Stegosaurus.
Which there's that scene where she's crawling through the log and the tail comes down and they try and take her out.
I'm just like, this is dumb. This is stupid. Anyways.
Yeah.
That was I'll do that. I'll leave it alone with the quibbles after that.
There's also the scene where they release the baby T-Rex and she's like sitting in the open door like this big smile on her face.
Yeah.
And Ian Malcolm's like, okay, let's get back inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you see any themes, any like legible themes in this movie that make sense to you, or like I don't personally see it. I wrote down some.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
I mean, other than, you know, pretty obviously showcasing like this particular crew of Engine and like their like, it's really wrong and bad of them to go there and try and like take advantage of these creatures, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like it's like the most obvious theme that there is.
Yeah. I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be some zoo ethics thing or what.
Maybe so. I would kind of argue like I don't think every single movie in the world necessarily needs like really strong themes. Like sometimes it's just a fun movie.
I don't either, but this like there's too much going, like there's too many lines and stuff, and that it's in there like it's trying to say something. Like it would be a different story if it was just like a fun action movie with dinosaurs and they're not like talking about all this stuff, but they are talking about it. So
yeah, I mean outside of you know some kind of argument about, you know, letting nature take care of itself, I'm not really sure if I can think of anything specifically.
This is something that I'll give credit to the Blank Check podcast, which is one that they actually do a similar thing that I do, except they focus on directors that get blank checks. But they actually did a Spielberg series where they started with The Lost World, because that was one of his first big blank check kind of movies that kind of bombed critically.
I love a good blank check movie. Sometimes they are amazing. Gotta be honest though.
Yeah.
Usually not great. I think the one now I'm thinking of is Megalopolis.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm very intrigued. But yeah, don't tell me anything. Yeah, one of the things they said that I was like, oh yeah, okay, which I don't think the movie's trying to do this, but they said it's kind of a semi-interesting meta-commentary on itself, and the fact that it's like there was no need to go back. We should have just left it alone. And it's like the same with the movie. Like there was no need to make a sequel. We should have left it alone.
Yeah, it's kind of a theme in Jurassic Park 3 as well. Like there's a second island the whole time.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. I guess just do you have any final thoughts before I share my final thought?
Yeah.
You like here? Yeah. I want you to do this. You really like this movie. I've ripped on the movie the whole time. I still had a good time with the movie. I like the T-Rex stuff. The T-Rex stuff is pretty fun. I don't know about T-Rex in San Diego. It's fun standalone, but in the movie, I don't know about it. But the T-Rex stuff on the island, I really like that stuff. Thought it was fun. The robots are really cool. But I've done enough ripping on the movie. If you would like to share, like, the reason you still really, really like this movie, despite all of my, like, problems with it. Because we need your dissenting voice here at the end.
Well, I think, just a few things I can think of is, like, firstly, I do think, much like Spielberg, I do have a bit of a desire to be contrarian. My friends make fun of me all the time for like, they're always joking with me about, like, oh, like, if people like something, you're going to hate it, or vice versa, which isn't always true, but yeah, sometimes it is. Like I said, I am a big fan of monster movies. Like, I mean, like, even, like, one that I know is going to be cheesy and bad, I can still have a good time with, I mean, I used to love watching, like, the Sci-Fi Channel original movies every week, which is still crazy to think. I don't know if they do it anymore, but it's still crazy to think they used to make so many movies that they could put one out every single week. It's crazy.
That's true. Yeah.
And most of them were terrible, but hey, it was fun. But I think for me, there's a couple different things about this movie I really like. Number one, I do like that it kind of leads a little bit into, like, some, like, survival horror elements, and I think it'd be really interesting to see a Jurassic Park movie that leans more into that. I just, the idea of them, like I always thought, like, a cool concept for, like, a Jurassic Park game, and there's been some games that have kind of done this at this point, is like you shipwreck, you wash up on the island, and you end up finding out there's dinosaurs, and you have to, like, learn how to defend yourself against them. And I just, like, there are some elements of that where it's like everything that can go wrong for these people does go wrong, and and at certain points they're literally being picked off, like, one by one, but I also think that just, with some of the action sequences in this movie being, like, bigger and more over the top for various different reasons, I do like that. But also, maybe this movie just kind of connects with, like, that 6-year-old child who loved dinosaurs more than the first film does. As much as I love the first film, I think in some ways, and part of this was probably technological reasons, I think in this movie the dinosaurs act more like I want dinosaurs to act, whereas in the first movie they act more like, I mean, they're literally a theme park attraction gone wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I feel like in this movie they're much more, like, animalistic.
Yeah.
And so, again, I it's one of those things where I don't know if I can really necessarily put it into words. I just know that I have always, and I love the first film, I love it. It's iconic. It's one of the best, sci-fi films ever made. Totally agree with that. One of Spielberg's best films. Totally agree with that. I enjoy Jurassic Park 3, even though I think, and I know you do as well, you actually said you like it better than this one. We both enjoy that one, even though we both can agree that it's obviously not as good. And I liked Jurassic World. Fallen Kingdom, like I said, was really bad. I haven't watched Dominion. But I don't know, there's just something about this movie when I think about it. It's probably the nostalgia, but it's just always been the one that I've been the most drawn to, and in a lot of ways I feel like I can remember more of those iconic moments from it. And I think honestly it's just the characters. I think it's just got a lot, as much as, like, the characters are much better developed in the first movie, I think this one just has cooler characters, like Chimbo, like Peter, Peter Stromae's character, like the paleontologist with the cool cowboy hat and the beard. I don't know. There's just a lot of sequences in this movie that I remember very fondly, and I don't know. Again, I think it's because it's more monster centric, much like Jurassic Park 3. That's the reason why I like that one as well. Is, like, it's much more of a monster movie than a Jurassic Park movie. I don't know. It just it makes that little 6-year-old's version of me just really giddy watching this one.
Yeah, and I almost wonder too, like, if it's just like it comes down to like the lens you're watching the movie through. Like if you're just watching the movie through the lens of like, let's see what dinosaurs can do and who gives a rip, like what the characters are. Let's just see how much fun we can have with dinosaurs. Like, you're probably gonna have a good time with it, you know. And like 6-year-old JP or Eli probably like that's why you're watching the movie, is to see how the dinosaurs are gonna kill somebody, or you know, that sort of thing.
To be fair, I probably watched this when I was a little older than
maybe
6.
like 9,
but
10.
But I like 5-6 years old was like my peak like dinosaur phase.
Right. And so I don't know, watching it through that, I can see it. I'm watching it, I guess, like I'm kind of like held down by the fact with this one that I'm watching it through the lens of like going through Steven Spielberg's filmography.
Yeah.
And so like it's just not gonna add up to what I've been watching from him for most of his filmography so far. And so I think it's just tough to like take those lenses off, like when I'm watching it like in sequence of all of his other movies.
I think because like for me, like the two genres that like are like, you know, kind of more guilty pleasure genres for me are like supernatural action films. So like, you know, your Resident Evils, your like the Underworld franchise, you know, stuff like that, and then monster movies. Like I don't know, I'm just able to give them so much more grace because
I think that's good though.
When it comes to a monster movie, like, dude, I'm a simple man. You give me some kind of like big, you know, scary, beastly, and then like some like old man drifter with a shotgun taking it on. Yeah, I'm there. You know, I'm having a good time. And so, yeah, I don't know. And, you know, like I said, it's for me, it's like the same as like the 1998 Godzilla film, the American one, in that, which is funny. Like, I don't know if you know this, but the Japanese audience reacted to that movie so terribly that, number one, they referred to the creature in that movie as Zilla, not Godzilla. And number two, in the movie Godzilla Final Wars from like 2000 or 2004, I can't remember, like it's like literally Godzilla like fights a bunch of different monsters and kills them all, and like that's the first one that he fights, and the fight is over in like 2 seconds. It's like they decimate Zilla in that movie. And but for me, it's kind of in the same category as that, where it's like, you know, people can argue it's not a great movie. I could definitely understand that, but for me, I have a good time with it regardless. Yeah, you know. Yeah, and I wish I would be like that more. Honestly, I feel like I definitely can tend to be a lot more critical of other genres, like, especially like when it comes to like, you know, superhero movies and a lot of other blockbusters. I'm going to be much more critical. But something like this,
it's hard. It's tough, and it also like the mood you go into something with too can affect like your experience with it. There's a lot, but the moral is like go watch The Lost World Jurassic Park with JP's eyes and not mine if you want to enjoy it. Because to me, it's a lot of plot and no story.
Yeah, like even this year there's been a few kind of monster-esque flicks that have come out. Like I went and saw April. I saw Abigail, which I really liked. I thought it was really good. But despite the fact that they ruined the best twist in the movie in the trailer. Yeah. So like the first half of the movie, they're trying to figure out who's killing everybody. It's like, well, we already know
that's what
who was doing it. But it still is really, 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 really fun. It's a great, like, kind of like horror comedy action flick. I found out it's the people who did Ready or Not, which or no, they did I don't know if it was Ready or Not, or I think they also did the movie You're Next, which I've seen You're Next, not Ready or Not, but You're Next was really fun. And then also at that same time, a movie called Sting came out, which was about like this like Sting, which was about like this alien spider, basically, that kind of starts killing people in this like apartment building, and it was pretty cheesy. I gave it like a 3.5. I gave it the same rating as Abigail. Actually, I gave them both, or maybe I gave Abigail 4 stars. I think I gave Sting like 3.5. Like I was like, you know what? Gotcha. Hey, it's a nice little 90-minute like thriller. It was pretty campy. It felt like a throwback to like something from like the 50s in some ways. And it tried to have a decent message. So I don't know. And there's another one coming out soon with Anthony Mackie. I just saw the trailer for it called Elevation, which comes out in November, and I'm like, this probably isn't going to be good, but you best believe I'm going to go see it. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just, big CGI alien creature thing in a post-apocalyptic environment. I'm there,
Hey, I gotta love it. Gotta respect the dedication to your genre, Gotta respect it.
Oh, Quiet Place Day One. That was another one that came out this year. That was great. It was so good, actually.
I did enjoy that one. I have a great respect for the first one. That I didn't care for the second one that much in relation to the first one, but I thought this one was better. It was kind of somewhere in between the first and the second one for me.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Yeah. I know a lot of people did like the second one, but I don't know.
I think it's as good as the first, personally.
That's fine. Yeah. But
yeah.
It's not something I have strong feelings about, but
I think my thing with that series, as much as I love it, is I'm like, at some point, we need to move past. We need to get from point A to point B quietly. That's like my only gripe with the franchise at this point. Is like I'm hoping we get part 3 to finish a storyline with the main family, the Abbott family, and like them like kind of taking the fight to the Death Angels. I want that movie, but it's also one of those franchises where like I don't want them to milk it, but honestly, there's so many stories they could tell within the world that would be interesting. But at some point, it can't just be, we've got to get from point A to point B quietly as possible. Because like literally all 3 movies so far, that's kind of the main plot, you could argue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, for day one, I was all on board for going to get some pizza. I was like, heck yes, dude, let's go get some pizza. That's what's up. That's what you've got your priorities straight at the end of the world. I want a good slice of pizza.
Also, most unrealistic cat I've ever seen in my life. Ain't no way.
Yeah, that cat.
That was not a cat. That was like a guardian angel, familiar, or it might have been an alien itself. There ain't no way. Ain't no way.
Yeah. I guess just to wrap up this discussion, reeling us back in. To me, I really feel like Spielberg is. I think with this film, he sort of realizes he had a strange like transition point coming out of the 80s into the 90s, and then he hits like knockout year with Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. And I think this movie was him trying to go back to the well that he's just kind of like tapped out of at this point. To me, it's like, I don't know, that it feels like there's a lot of like very like bored and lazy choices made. That feels like he's just like kind of going through the motions of making this kind of big blockbuster movie. And I think maybe a cut sequence that is definitive of that is going from a mother screaming because her daughter has just been torn apart by compies to Ian Malcolm yawning. Which it's literally a transition cut from the mother's screaming mouth to Ian Malcolm's mouth yawning.
Which I gotta say, one of the most brilliant like crossfades I've ever seen in my life. It's really weird in context, but it is kind of brilliant filmmaking, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's iconic.
Yeah, I think it's a visual representation of Spielberg feeling like he's ready to move on to a different phase of his career. And I think that's what he does. He really after this, he really kind of fully commits to his post Schindler's List era. He really doesn't do another like all in wonder childlike movie until he goes back to the Indiana Jones well with Crystal Skull in 2008. And then, he does Adventures of Tintin as the movie after that. So he really doesn't go back to that well until then. I mean, like, Catch Me If You Can is a fun movie, but it's an adult fun movie. It's not.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he's really doing a lot more serious movies. And then, like, the one or two that you could say are more fun movies, like, you know, Catch Me If You Can, War of the Worlds, they don't have the same feel as, like, Jurassic Park and E.T. and
dude,
all those.
His take on War of the Worlds, that movie is like I think I rewatched that pretty recently, and dude, the tension and like
I'm really excited to rewatch
it's like the cracking glass scene in this movie. But it's like
out.
the entire movie is like that. It's so good.
Cool. That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. But yeah, that's kind of my final thought on this movie is Ian Malcolm yawning is Spielberg showing us that he's kind of ready to do a different phase of his career and fully dive into it. And I think that's what he does. So I'm excited to get into that.
I can't remember if I said this on the Empire of the Sun episode, but, you know, Spielberg obviously is someone whose films I'm very fond of. I've grown up watching so many of them, whether it be Indiana Jones, whether it be, you know, the like E.T., stuff like that, Jurassic Park. But he's someone that I wonder if he's past his prime at this point. Because I really can't remember the last Spielberg movie I've seen in recent years that I was like, wow, that was a Steven Spielberg movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of a sad thing to think about sometimes for me.
Yeah. I think I'm really enjoying actually this era of Spielberg. Like I'm excited to see what he does next because I really enjoyed his West Side Story.
I did like that one a lot, actually.
And I thought The Fabelmans was really great. I thought it was a really, really good movie. And so I'm excited to see what he does next. I know he has a couple of things on the docket. Like I know at some point there was like a Bullet remake with I think Bradley Cooper in the Steve McQueen role. That's Frank Bullitt.
Yeah.
So that would be cool to see. I think that would be a fun remake. That
I feel like also he you know, within the last like kind of 2 decades, he's also kind of stepped way more into a kind of executive producer role too.
He's always been doing that. He's just doing that. He's doing that, I think, probably to the same degree, but just directing less often.
I just think within the last 20 years, especially within the last 10 years, there's probably more movies that I've really enjoyed that he's been more involved behind the scenes than movies he's done recently that he's the director of that I really enjoy.
That's fair.
I would say that.
Yeah. I think I shared in the kind of intermission between the 80s and 90s episode that I think it was between like I don't know, like early 92 through like 2013. There was only 1 year that didn't have a movie directed or produced by Spielberg. Through that like nearly 2 decade span, or over 2 decades span. So just like the dude is crazy. And the dude was crazy for like a long time of just producing stuff and directing it. And but yeah, I'm excited to see what he does next. This one, this too, like he's started in between Schindler's List and this movie, he started DreamWorks, which like who starts a new studio? Like
I didn't realize it was that late. Yeah, I mean, I feel like
so Amblin was a production company, but DreamWorks is a full-on studio. And he starts. I think they start DreamWorks in '94, and so this movie is not DreamWorks because Universal already had the Jurassic Park rights. But next, when we cover Amistad in a couple weeks, that's his first movie, and it's not the first DreamWorks movie. There were like 2 others that year, also that came out before Amistad, but Amistad was his first movie with DreamWorks as the studio that he made. And it's just crazy that like this dude was so big that he was just like, I'm going to start a whole studio, not just like a production company, but a whole studio, and that's just a whole nother animal. That's just wild.
It's also very rare for a studio to do both live action and animated content.
Yeah.
And I think you can argue that their animated stuff is kind of like the stuff that's a lot more popular. I mean, the Shrek franchise.
Yeah.
Was the Wild Robot DreamWorks, I think?
It was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
so
it's
it's
great.
like
it's great.
I mean, I literally saw someone was like, they also took their kid to go see it, and they were like, it was great. Disney really needs to take some notes from DreamWorks, you know. They obviously don't put out as much animated content, but I feel like what they do choose to create and put out is like pretty top tier stuff, and I feel like they're definitely. I feel like as Disney kind of leans into more just doing like schlock just for the sake of like making kids content, I feel like DreamWorks is really still trying to be like, hey, kids can also handle kind of like mature stories as well. Like we can. It doesn't have to be just a bunch of bright colors and a bunch of fart jokes the whole time. You know what I mean? Sure. So. Yeah.
So that he has a lot going on, and while making this too is getting his studio going. So, that might also like contribute to his seeming distraction with this movie. But yeah, that's it for this one. I think we already mentioned. Or maybe it was off. It was before we started recording.
I think it was before we started.
I had mentioned that I gave this movie a 2.5 star. I just, as much as I love dinosaurs,
a little harsh.
Maybe it is, but I'm also like having to compare it to other Spielberg movies.
That's fair.
Because I'm working through the filmography, and there's a few that I have like 3 stars that I liked like enough more than this movie to like say, okay, I guess. This is a.
Do you think this is one of his worst movies he's ever made? Like I feel like this would probably be pretty low, like as far as the Spielberg rankings.
So actually, I have it right above Hook.
That's crazy.
I know people probably aren't happy with me for my
the pitchforks and torches are coming out, bro.
Hook. But I like dinosaurs more than Peter Pan, so I have this one right above Hook.
That's fair.
And then, other than that, like the Twilight Zone movie, I have it ranked for his segment, which is not good at all. And then Always in 1941 are both terrible in my opinion. Always looks really good, and 1941 has some really good like set pieces too, but they're just like as movies and stories, they're just like not good at all. So. Yeah, this is like in the bottom few movies for me, like bottom tier Spielberg.
Fair,
but JP.
Well,
watch the movie with JP's eyes because he has.
It was
higher.
Well, I was gonna say it was interesting because as we were talking offline, I realized that like one of the things I did a few years ago when I started taking Letterboxd more seriously is I kind of like from memory tried to go through and give a rating for any movie I could think of that I knew that I saw. And so I realized that I actually have Jurassic Park OG 1993 as a 5 stars, and I actually have The Lost World listed as 4, even though I do enjoy it more. It's definitely my favorite of the franchise. But I think
it's fair to say this movie is better, but I like this movie more. Like that. Yeah, that's a fair distinction, I think.
For sure. Yeah. Like I, it's definitely not my I don't know if there's any like Spielberg movie I really like have lower than maybe a 3 star. Like I think
don't watch 1941.
Honestly, a part of me feels like I kind of want to watch it because I feel like maybe I would think it's kind of silly and enjoy it. I mean, I think like the Ridiculous Six. I think that movie's really funny, as stupid as it is.
I didn't laugh. I don't remember laughing really at all in 1941.
Yeah, like I give like Ready Player One has like 3.5 stars, kind of stuff like that. But
yeah,
but yeah, no. So I can concede that it's definitely possible outside of like the Jurassic World franchise. I can concede of the 3, I can understand why somebody would think it's the worst of the 3. although it is my favorite of the three.
Yeah.
So I can definitely concede that.
I watched Jurassic Park 3, which is directed by Joe Johnston, not Spielberg. But I liked Jurassic Park 3. I liked the story a little bit more. It seems like they had a little bit better handle on like the daylight CGI in Jurassic Park 3. I think the Pteranodon sequences are really fun.
Joe Johnston's done some really. It's interesting that he's the one.
Yeah.
That did Jurassic Park 3, because if I'm remembering some of the movies I've seen of him, he has a very Spielbergian vibe to some of his stuff.
Well, he wanted to do the second one. Like, he had approached Spielberg and was like, hey, if you do a sequel, I really want to do it. But then Spielberg did it. And so I guess when they decided they were going to do the third one, Spielberg remembered that. And
yeah, because did he do the Rocketeer?
Say that again?
Didn't he do the Rocketeer in like the kind of late
Johnston?
90s? I want to say he did, maybe. I recently watched his take.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that movie I feel like is very Spielbergian feeling. From what I remember, it's been a long time since I've seen it. And then that
was 91. Yeah.
I watched his version of The Wolfman recently with Benicio del Toro, and I gave it 2.5 stars. I loved how violent it was. Like, it was actually shockingly pretty violent for like a mid 2010s film, and it takes itself very seriously, but it's also very messy. But yeah, I'm just looking. He did
Jumanji too.
Oh yeah, he did Jumanji. He did October Sky, which is a movie I definitely watched as a kid. And he also did the first Captain America movie, which is pretty solid. So yeah, I think he definitely was the right person to kind of do. He also did Hidalgo. Okay, I haven't seen that movie in forever, but I liked that movie when it came out too. So I definitely think he's definitely someone that was a good choice to kind of make an entry into a franchise that's a Spielberg franchise for sure.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention this earlier. We were talking about when we were talking about special effects and like the making of stuff. But there's a documentary. So I have like the Blu-ray. Like this is actually the Jurassic World Ultimate Collection, but it has like Jurassic Park all the way through Dominion.
Shame on you. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
So it has all 6 of the movies, but it has this documentary called Return to Jurassic Park, which is a 6-part documentary, and it has it split on the disc between the first 3 movies. But you can, it's really good, like, because it goes through all of the 3 first movies and does all the behind the scenes stuff and interviews. And, it's really good. So if you have like a Blu-ray collection like I have, then you can probably watch those on those different discs. But you could probably also find the whole documentary just all together somewhere
kind of
out
like
there.
YouTube or something.
Yeah.
Well,
so I recommend
know,
that. It's a good watch.
Yeah, I know we're trying to wrap up the episode here, but I guess my question for you is who do you think is someone that you think is currently kind of carrying that Spielberg mantle outside of the man himself? I know we talked about Jordan Peele, definitely, especially with like
doesn't
a
make
movie
enough
like Nope.
movies. That's the only problem with Peele is.
Well, I guess maybe not in the frequency of movies, but I'm talking about someone who matches that vibe of like the most iconic Spielbergian blockbusters. I know we talked about, but we talked about Jordan Peele with Nope and how that's a very Spielberg feeling movie. Yeah, obviously very influenced by Jaws. You know,
I think. So I think this might be a surprising answer, but Bong Joon-ho can make a mean blockbuster movie, and he has one actually coming out
Mickey
early
17?
next year with Mickey 17.
Very
that I'm excited
for
to see, because I mean, Parasite was incredible. Snowpiercer is great. Okja, I really enjoy. The Host, speaking of monster movies, is really fun.
I forgot that was his movie.
So I think Bong Joon-ho, and he has a very has a very good handle on those big blockbustery kind of movies. So I would say him. I mean, the easy answer is Christopher Nolan.
It's so different though. I mean, I definitely agree.
It's different, but it's not.
But,
he makes the blockbuster movie, and he's a household name that makes blockbuster movies that are both that he makes both serious ones and like really fun actiony sci-fi ones. So to me, that's the most like direct comparison, even though like their films look and feel different as far as like a household name that makes big budget movies that everyone sees, big ensemble cast. Like that's the, I guess, most direct comparison, I think. But yeah,
I feel like part of me would want to throw like Denis Villeneuve out there, but I feel like his movies are just way too artsy to be compared to Spielberg. Like, not to say like Spielberg does have some very iconic cinematography in some of his films, but I feel like when I think of Spielberg movies, it's never the cinematography that sticks out to me. You know,
it's the camera work to me.
It's the camera work. It's the characters. It's the way that he tells the story for sure. Whereas opposed to like a Nolan or a Villeneuve, like there's like scenes that I would print out as a poster for my wall. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, Villeneuve is. I don't know.
I mean, he's crushed it with the Dune.
He's a little bit different register to me than. He's like, he's technically making blockbuster movies, but it's kind of in a different register than like a Nolan blockbuster or a Spielberg blockbuster, which kind of feel like of the same mold in a way. Yeah,
that's fair.
But
I think for me, Jordan Peele would be my.
Peele is the most. Peele. I say that like, Get Out and Us like aren't like terribly Spielbergian feeling. But
I think Us is a lot more than Get Out for sure.
Yeah, Nope definitely is like. When I saw it, I thought this is like Jaws in the sky. The minute I walked out of the theater, but yeah. Other than that, I can't really. Nobody else really comes to mind. I mean,
I would say maybe I don't know if you know these guys, but Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson. So they're like a directing duo. They've done they did like a movie called The Endless, which I really love. I recommend everybody see that. But more recently, they've actually kind of solidified themselves as like Marvel's go-to guys. So they did some episodes of Moon Knight. They did like the best episodes of Moon Knight, in my opinion. They actually directed all of Loki season 2. And they are the ones that Marvel brought in when they did the refresh on Daredevil Born Again. So like, I don't know if you know anything about that, but like they kind of filmed some of it, and then Kevin Feige was basically like, this all sucks. We're hitting the reset on this, and then they brought in Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson to kind of take over, and they've kind of like reshot everything now. So part of me is like, it's Marvel. I hope it's going to be good, but part of me is like, I like those guys a lot. They've done a lot of like kind of very. The couple of movies they've done are very Spielbergian feeling, and they're also starting to help produce a lot of stuff more now as well, which also is very Spielbergian. So maybe them as well.
Yeah. I was kind of scrolling through just like my highest rated movies on Letterboxd just to kind of see if I could see anyone. The only other person that like was like, maybe this, not exactly like Spielbergian in the way they feel, but just like a guy that makes like that here, especially here recently, is kind of making these big genre movies is Rian Johnson. He's got the Knives Out franchise. He's got Looper. Though his kind of take on Star Wars is was
controversial to say the least.
Yeah, but the Rian Johnson kind of feels like if a Spielberg was like really trying to make genre movies.
Gareth Edwards.
Yeah, Gareth Edwards is fair. I was also thinking about Matt Reeves if he wasn't so like stuck to franchises.
That's true. That's true.
He feels like he could be working in that register. Gareth Edwards, Matt Reeves. Gareth Edwards.
I think Gareth Edwards is so good at producing that same sense of scale and wonder that we get from some of the best of Spielberg, for sure.
No.
Which is why...
Did we talk
I'm
about
so
that
excited.
off mic, too? I think we did. We were talking about
definitely...
how, like, he needs... So Spielberg, I was saying Spielberg early on kind of learned that he has great ideas but isn't a very good writer. And I was saying Gareth Edwards kind of feels the same. Like, he has great ideas, but he needs a good writer to write his movies for him.
Which, like we said on screen while we were recording, we're both very excited for his take on Jurassic Park. And if it comes out bad, there's nothing that could happen. If it's bad, there's nothing that would make me want to blame him. I know it's not going to be his fault because I have not hated. I love every movie he's made so far. So I think he's one of those directors where I'm like, I don't even like the creator, like you said, like the story, like the script overall wasn't great, but visually, absolutely insane. So
but Gareth Edwards is kind of stuck to franchises too, like.
Well, the creator
other than the creator, and I guess like his kind of
his first film, Monsters.
Yeah, which I haven't seen, but like his other three are going to be Godzilla, Rogue One, and then this new Jurassic World movie. But I don't know.
Sure,
I just wish guys like that were more working in original stuff like Spielberg did.
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in, I guess. But I guess just wrapping up, that's really all we have for this week. Next week, JP is going to join me again, and we're going to, since this is a movie that JP feels like is a little underrated, I thought it would be fun to kind of roll off of that and talk about some of our favorite films that we really like that we feel are underrated. Should be a fun discussion. And I guess we'll do like a top 3 or top 5 style kind of discussion in that way. So that's next week, and then we'll pick back up with Spielberg's Amistad the week after that. So looking forward to that. I have never seen Amistad before, so excited to fill in that blind spot. Yeah.
It was we had it on DVD growing up, so I've seen it quite a few times, and it's great. It's a good time.
Good.
Well, I mean, it's a little depressing and sad, but it's a phenomenal
movie.
film.
Yeah, okay. Good to hear.
Anthony Hopkins is great.
Yeah. Morgan Freeman. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, until then, I have been Eli Price for J.P. Boudreaux. You've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We will see you next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.